Our story begins with a desperate act. The first thing he did after being reborn was scavenge a crunchy, filthy waterworm from a foul ditch and swallow it whole. Even as it writhed wildly in his throat, he endured the nausea and forced it down, knowing the lightning apocalypse was about to descend. In this world, everyone has a chance to awaken, and their power depends entirely on the very last thing they ate. We see those who ate fish skin and eggs transform into massive, 100-meter cons, capable of devouring everything in their path. Others ate fried chicken wings and awakened the phoenix lineage, soaring into the sky with newfound pride. But in his previous life, because he had eaten nothing but a piece of dried rat, he actually turned into a rat himself, a creature despised by everyone he encountered. Ultimately, his journey ended when an unknown, ferocious beast crushed him under a single foot. Now that he has been reborn, he has obtained the power of the infinite devourer. The more powerful the object he consumes, the more energy feedback he will receive to strengthen himself. And in this life, that simple piece of waterworm will soon become a glutton capable of devouring all things. At this moment, we find him staring intently at the glass box sitting right in front of him. Inside is a deep red waterworm, its obese body already beginning its transformation into a glutton. Its bloated form twists and turns constantly, looking very much like a giant red maggot. He asks himself why he is hesitating. After all, swallowing it is the only way to grow stronger. Making his decision, he rolls up his sleeves and reaches into the glass box, intent on pulling out the mutated creature. But the mutated worm fights back, breaking free from his grip and even managing to bite his finger. As it does, the bloody water inside the box grows even thicker and more opaque. Sensing the injection of fresh blood, the mutated worm becomes extraordinarily excited. Watching this scene, he feels a flash of secret anger and acts quickly, though the creature manages to slip away. After that, he pulled the mutated worm out and swallowed it whole in a single, decisive gulp. A notification appeared, congratulating our host for successfully consuming the mutated creature. The genetic sequence was successfully extracted, and now we wait to see what this new power will provide. Immediately, a strange sensation of tingling and numbness began to spread from his bitten finger. Looking down, he noticed the spot where a large chunk of his flesh had originally been torn away. Countless blood-colored threads suddenly sprouted, wrapping the wound and regrowing the missing flesh in just 2 seconds. It was, in fact, the power of limb regeneration, a very useful trick to have, to be honest. But there was more. He also felt a violent, surging power beginning to take root deep within his body. It seemed as though his entire being was now filled with an inexhaustible, restless energy. He walked over to the mirror and stood perfectly still, bracing himself for what he might see. As he stared at his reflection, he found himself struck by a wave of genuine surprise. His original height, which had been around 1.7 meters, was no longer the same. He had shot up directly to 1.9 meters, towering over his former self. His once black hair had also transformed into a striking, vibrant mane of deep red. Even his brownish-gray eyes had shifted, turning a piercing and predatory shade of scarlet. Looking closely, he realized he now possessed a certain demonic charm, which, naturally, was a bit unexpected. After carefully inspecting his body, he discovered a mouth like an abyss had appeared in his right palm. It was lined with dozens of sharp fangs, identical to the mutant worm, capable of draining an enemy's blood. However, this worried him, with the dark riots yet to begin. Appearing like this would make it impossible to go outside. Just as that thought crossed his mind, his long red hair and features miraculously returned to normal. Even the breathing sensation in his palm vanished, leaving no trace behind. As we see this happen, his eyes lit up with a newfound sense of hope. It was truly incredible, especially since there were only a few days left before the dark riots began. He realized he still had 2 more opportunities to devour and evolve. He knew he had to keep devouring. He remembered an invisible billionaire in Dali who collected a rare electric eel. He recalled that just as the dark riots were about to erupt, things would change. This rare electric eel would also transform into a creature capable of releasing terrifying power. If he devoured it during the genetic sequence reorganization, he might unlock even more powerful abilities. However, given his current identity, actually reaching the man was quite a challenge. It was obviously impossible for someone like him to simply meet this mysterious billionaire. Fortunately, the man had a daughter who happened to be studying at King Bay University. After making his preparations, he headed straight for the school. He waited until he reached an abandoned park not far from the campus, looking for Yang Xiaotian. To be honest, this wealthy daughter lived a very low-profile life. To avoid exposing her status as a rich heiress, she walked here every day after school to catch her car. When he arrived at the park, we see an absolutely beautiful figure standing not far away. The girl possessed a distinct aura, giving people the feeling that they shouldn't dare approach her. At that moment, a Rolls-Royce began to approach from the distance. Immediately afterward, 3 bodyguards stepped out of the luxury vehicle. They respectfully opened the door, preparing for Yang Xiaotian to step inside and depart. He stepped directly out from the corner and, with a faint smile, jokingly told the security guards that this was a kidnapping. Upon seeing this, Yang Xiaotian maintained a calm expression, as if she didn't take him seriously at all. After all, these 3 bodyguards were seasoned professionals. They were military veterans who had undergone rigorous selection before becoming personal protectors. Without a single word, the lead bodyguard lunged forward to deal with the intruder. Our protagonist threw a casual punch, and we see the bodyguard's facial features instantly distort from the impact. Without even a cry, the man was launched 5 meters back, crashing into a crooked tree and losing consciousness. Yang Xiaotian's eyes widened in complete shock at the display of raw power. The 2 remaining bodyguards, who had been ready to act, suddenly found themselves reconsidering their career choices. They stood there absolutely stunned, wondering what on earth they were actually witnessing. A single punch that sends a grown man flying 5 meters? It was unheard of. He began to wonder if he was even human anymore, feeling a bit surprised by his own strength. Not expecting such power, he walked toward the Rolls-Royce and gave it a tentative kick. With a dull thud, the supposedly indestructible luxury vehicle was shoved 3 meters away. The entire car door was severely deformed, sinking deeply into the frame from the force. The scene suddenly fell into a heavy silence as Yang Xiaotian's expression turned rigid with fear. As for the other 2 guards, they were so terrified that their legs gave out and they collapsed to the ground. Ignoring the fallen guards, he walked directly toward Yang Xiaotian. Deep down, she was incredibly nervous, her hands trembling as he approached. He asked if she thought he was there for money or her, then told her to call her father and demand the rare electric eel. One hand delivers the eel, the other hand delivers the person, a simple exchange, or so he claimed. Yang Xiaotian found herself unable to process this, her mind clouded by a thick fog of confusion. She couldn't fathom why this man would go to such lengths just for the rare electric eel her father collected. With no other choice, she pulled out her phone and called young Nancy, briefly explaining the dire situation. Meanwhile, in the Tiansheng Group conference room, a solemn middle-aged man went into high alert upon receiving the call. To him, this was nothing short of a rebellion, and he couldn't believe anyone dared touch his daughter in Dar City. He immediately ordered the most elite troops to be sent out as reinforcements. He demanded it be done instantly, while also mobilizing the finest medical team in all of Dar City. They were told to bring their best equipment and wait at a designated location, just in case. They had to be ready to respond to any emergency that might arise, which, given the circumstances, seemed likely. After arranging everything, he declared he was on his way, his voice tight with paternal fury. Young Nancy then instructed his driver to head home first to retrieve that mysterious, rare electric eel. Back at the scene, Yang Xiaotian told him she had done as requested and that her father would arrive soon. She nodded nervously, and after a brief silence, Shinjin finally began to speak again. He explained that in just 2 days, a massive aurora borealis would sweep across the entire region of Lansin. Every living creature in Lansin would begin to mutate, transforming into terrifying, monstrous beasts. And here we learn the grim truth. The world order as they knew it was about to crumble entirely. Society was destined to fall into a state of unprecedented chaos, leaving no one untouched by the coming storm. That electric eel, he warned, would also transform into a truly horrifying mutant beast. He told her quite bluntly that if she didn't get rid of it, her entire family would meet a miserable end. Believe it or not, he continued, I have no intention of taking this electric eel for free. In exchange, I can give you this life-saving information in advance. One could say it was a fair trade, though, to be honest, it sounded completely insane. Yang Xiaotian said nothing, simply staring at him as if he were a complete idiot. She shook her head in disbelief, but he wasn't just talking nonsense. Then, he made a cut on his own hand, holding his right hand firmly with his left. Immediately after, threads of blood on his finger began to knit back together, restoring it as it was before. The 2 bodyguards watching this scene from a distance were left absolutely petrified. Yang Xiaotian was also frozen on the spot, completely shocked by what she had just witnessed. We see that her family's industries stretch across the entirety of Dar City. He warned her that once the dark winter arrived, every kind of supply would become extremely scarce. If you trust me, he offered, you can choose to follow me. He could guide them to survival, noting that even mercenaries need to eat, drink, and use the bathroom. He was no exception, of course. In this new era, fighting alone was never the best option. In such a chaotic world, he knew it was absolutely necessary to attract strong allies. And the Yang family was, quite obviously, an excellent choice for his plans. Cooperation would be beneficial for everyone involved, a rare win-win in a dying world. I understand, she replied. I will tell my father everything and discuss it with him properly. She promised to give him an answer as soon as possible, just as an urgent sound echoed in the distance. Several armored vehicles screeched to a halt right in front of them. A middle-aged man stepped out and saw the aftermath of the attack by the deformed Laoshi. In that instant, Yang Xiaotian's heart sank to the very bottom. But seeing that Yang Xiaotian was unharmed, the man breathed a heavy sigh of relief. Our protagonist glanced at the fully armed military personnel, smiling nonchalantly at Yang Shengzi. Chief Yang, did you bring what I want? He asked, leaving Yang Shengzi quite surprised to hear such a question. He certainly hadn't expected the person who took his daughter to be so incredibly young. Is this what you're after? Yang Shengzi asked, and with those words, he tossed the briefcase over. He took it and clicked it open, revealing a completely blue electric eel resting inside. It gave off a pungent smell of seafood, but without a word, he simply picked up the eel and began to devour it. Watching this display, Yang Shengzi stood there, utterly stunned. What on earth was happening? Even the soldiers were left completely dumbfounded. Had they really just encountered a madman? Once he finished devouring the eel, a sudden electric discharge surged from his skin. Yang Shengzi watched in disbelief, knowing that the current from such an eel is enough to kill a large dog. The system congratulated our host, noting he had successfully consumed the mutated electric eel. And just like that, the genetic sequence was successfully extracted. With a single thought, his short black hair turned a deep scarlet, and his eyes filled with a bloodthirsty glow once more. He extended his index finger, directly condensing a small, vibrating sphere of blood. The blood orb exploded in midair, and the soldiers nearby felt a powerful electric current tear through their bodies the moment it touched them. They collapsed directly to the ground, falling unconscious in a matter of seconds. Only Yang Xiaodian and Yang Shengzi remained standing, completely unharmed by the blast. Our protagonist turned his head, taking one last look at the father and daughter. After that, he silently vanished into the depths of the night. There was less than a day left before the onset of the Great Darkness. Deep down, he knew he still had one final opportunity to devour another essence. He had to complete this last consumption before the chaos truly began. Just then, he recalled that the city zoo was home to a very special kind of eagle. Its entire body was covered in feathers as hard as bone, capable of emitting a metallic glint. He already possessed blood venom and could control the power of lightning. All he lacked was a way to fly, so the next morning, he headed straight for the zoo. We see him arrive at the cage where that fierce, unique eagle was being kept. As soon as he reached it, however, he was met with a genuine surprise. It was clear that this fierce eagle had already begun its own transformation. Its black feathers looked like shards of steel, shimmering with a fascinating, cold light. Its talons were terrifying, resembling venomous snakes twisting in every direction. At that moment, the eagle was frantically striking the iron cage with its razor-sharp beak. In just a heartbeat, the cage shattered, and the beast broke free. It lunged at him instantly, causing his pupils to contract in sudden focus. To his eyes, the eagle's rapid movements seemed to slow down to a near crawl. In an instant, he seized the eagle by the neck and began to feed greedily. The system congratulated our host for successfully consuming the fierce eagle. The genetic sequence was successfully extracted. Immediately, with a single thought, two giant black wings 6 meters wide appeared behind him, soaring directly toward the sky. Suddenly, his phone rang, and on the other end of the line came the slightly anxious voice of Jans J-Ocean. Movi, something has happened here. Some beastly creatures have broken in. Can you come? Jans J-Ocean's voice trembled a little. She was clearly feeling a bit lost. He agreed immediately without a second thought, and, following the directions she provided, soon arrived near a food warehouse. As it turned out, the warehouse contained a massive amount of supplies, mostly processed foods that could be preserved for a long time. We see two men with grotesque faces looking at all of this with pure joy. The older brother's head was still proving to be quite useful. If we occupy this warehouse, we won't have to worry about food ever again. A fellow with a pig nose and a body covered in grease burst into a loud, boisterous laugh. Beside him stood a man who was easily 3 meters tall. This burly man, sporting ox horns, also laughed wildly at their good fortune. We have obtained beastly superpowers, they boasted. We are the children of luck, favored by heaven itself. Now we can do whatever we want, the oxhorn man said, approaching Jans J-Ocean with a predatory glint in his eyes. He rubbed his hands together and smiled with a distinct, unpleasant mischief. Big brother, what grade is she? What black grade? The man with the pig nose also chuckled, clearly sharing the same crude thoughts. Upon hearing their vulgar words, Jans J-Ocean's delicate face gradually turned pale with fear. Jan Nin quickly pulled Jans J-Ocean behind him, his brow furrowed as he prepared to say something. Suddenly, a massive hole tore open in the warehouse roof, shattering the tense silence. He descended into the warehouse like a falling star, landing with heavy, undeniable purpose. Jans J-Ocean didn't quite know why, but she suddenly felt a wave of relief wash over her. The oxhorn man and his pig-nosed companion, however, were simply too foolish to be afraid. They hadn't expected that anyone else besides them would be favored by heaven in such a way. Kid, I advise you not to meddle in things that don't concern you, the man growled. Our protagonist, however, didn't feel like wasting words on these two idiots. He simply struck them, two sharp, echoing slaps that rang through the entire building. The scene fell into a deathly silence as the workers, huddled in fear, forgot to breathe. Those two monsters from before suddenly didn't seem like such a threat anymore. No one expected him to resolve the entire situation with a couple of simple slaps. After that, he walked calmly toward Jans J-Ocean and her father to check on them. Jan Nin remained cautious, still keeping Jans J-Ocean protected safely behind his back. How have you been considering the matter we discussed last time? He asked after a brief hesitation. Movi, she asked softly, if we choose not to cooperate with you, will you eat us? I have no interest in eating people, he replied, but the dark disturbance will begin soon. What are your plans now? He asked, and hearing he wasn't a cannibal, everyone finally relaxed. If it weren't for you, Movi, we would already be dead, Jan Nan admitted solemnly. We will do whatever you say from now on, he added, looking at him as if he were a god. Clinging to this powerful man's leg surely won't be a mistake, Jan Nan thought to himself. The dark chaos was about to arrive, and in that moment, the entire existing order would crumble. We see that finding a safe place to establish a base had become the absolute priority. The security of his villa was high, and the construction materials were top tier, a rare luxury indeed. Movi and Sheo, if you don't mind, you can go there, Jan Nan suggested hopefully. Our protagonist nodded his head to show his agreement, as that had been his intention all along. He knew that, in the coming days, having raw power alone would simply not be enough. After the advent of the dark chaos, various resources would become the ultimate source of power. Supplies would become scarce, and in the later stages, the very environment itself would begin to change. A 10,000-year cold wave and a decade-long drought would appear in succession, a pleasant prospect, truly. In such a world, a secure shelter was not just a luxury, it was particularly important for survival. After confirming the plan, he turned his gaze back to the workers who were busy repairing and reinforcing. If you want to leave, I won't stop you, but those who stay must realize the chaos is crueler than you imagine. Since you have chosen to follow me, you must obey my orders unconditionally, he declared firmly. The workers all responded in unison, making it clear that they understood the gravity of the situation. Seeing this, he nodded with satisfaction and then called everyone together to begin the relocation process. An hour later, at the Banson-Jumpin villa, the father and daughter sat on the sofa, feeling quite overwhelmed. Movi and Sheo, should we continue to stockpile supplies? Jan Nan asked, still feeling a bit uncertain. With so many people, we must collect supplies, but there are more important things to do first. And here we learn the true danger. The first forbidden zone was about to arrive. The resources found within a forbidden zone are 100 times more valuable than ordinary supplies. Jansjaoshin and Jan Nan looked at each other. Though they had no idea what a forbidden zone was, they didn't ask too many questions. Movi, you said before that if we hadn't removed that electric eel, we would all have died miserably once the dark chaos erupted. Is that really true? Jan Nan asked, feeling a wave of terror wash over him after reflecting on the thought. If only we could be like Movi and Sheo. It would be wonderful to have a power as great as yours. We learned that once the dark chaos begins, a massive aurora will sweep across the entire blue star. Some people have a chance to awaken, transforming into the last animal they ate before the phenomenon took place. However, the probability of this happening is entirely random, a bit of a gamble, to be honest. He explained the principle clearly to them, and Jan Nan and his daughter didn't hesitate for a second. They immediately began to stockpile and consume a massive amount of food. Then, he asked each of them to have a little bit of everything as they ate their snacks. The taste of a dozen mixed foods is naturally indescribable, but to become a hunter-warrior, it was a small price to pay. For Jansjaoshin, it was no problem at all, and he asked curiously, am I ready? You are. Tomorrow, after the aurora sweeps the planet, you'll see the effect. Now get some rest. Tomorrow the first forbidden zone descends, and you will both be coming with me. Time passed quickly, and by the following day, deep within the dark reaches of the universe, something strange appeared. A pale blue aurora suddenly manifested, invading the blue planet with overwhelming speed. In an instant, the mutation caused by the dark upheaval and the aurora's radiation triggered transformations in the planet's animals. They turned into horrifying monsters, like stray dogs with their flesh turned inside out. Not a pleasant sight, certainly. As for Jansjaoshin, who had been waiting expectantly, he was about to discover exactly what he had become. He had been worried all night. He also felt the anomaly, and we see their bodies begin to undergo mutations. Jansjaoshin, for her part, was suddenly enveloped in a brilliant golden light. A sunflower pattern appeared between her brows, allowing her to release waves of golden energy. Meanwhile, Jan Nan found himself growing until he stood 3 people tall. It was a powerful force. It seemed, little friend, that they had truly succeeded. He felt an infinite power coursing through him, and his body had never felt so light. It was as if the whole world were under his control. The dark upheaval had arrived, and the first forbidden zone was about to appear. He decided to take the others with him into the forbidden zone, knowing they needed resources to grow stronger. Very soon, they set off in a large truck, and 2.5 hours later, they reached the entrance of the forbidden zone. Jan Nan still wanted someone to get out of the vehicle to scout the path ahead. However, he simply floored the accelerator, and the truck drove directly into the swirling vortex. Not far away, Li Wan, Jansjaoshin's sycophant, was watching the scene with a group of people. He had a strange expression, wondering to himself how that poor devil could be there. How was it possible that he was involved with the young Miss Jan? And why on earth was he driving a car straight into that mysterious whirlpool? Someone by his side suddenly asked what they should do now. Liwan reflected for a moment. Gritting his teeth, he noted that if a loser dared to drive in, they should follow their boss's orders to investigate. They already had superpowers, after all, so what was there to be afraid of? At this moment, we see that the Forbidden Zone is completely shrouded in darkness. A dense fog surrounds everything, while overhead, a blood-colored sun emits a strange, haunting red light. At that precise moment, from deep within the dense fog ahead, sudden bursts of ghostly howls began to echo. Everyone inside the vehicle immediately went on high alert, sensing the danger. We must remember that within these forbidden zones, dark creatures roam freely. One could essentially think of them as alien entities from another realm. He calmly stepped on the brake, looked over at Jan Nan, and asked what was wrong. He suggested that Jan Nan take the wheel while he went out to clear a path for them. Before Jan Nan could even react, the young man had already stepped out onto the ground. A second later, a group of strange figures shrouded in mist came charging out of the gloom. These figures stood 2 meters tall. Though they had humanoid shapes, they were clearly far from human. Jan Nan worried that even though Ma Bei was strong, the sheer number of opponents was simply too great. He felt he had to get out of the car to help him and protect Xiaodian. After saying this, Jan Nan frowned, his eyes level with the thick, swirling fog. He was about to reach out and open the door, but just then, a dull, heavy thud echoed through the air. We see Ma Bei raise his hand and deliver a single slap, instantly knocking down the 6 dark creatures in front of him. They were blown to pieces, leaving behind not even a single drop of blood, which is quite efficient, really. Jan Nan, who was still in the middle of opening the door, suddenly froze in his tracks. He was perfectly fine, but the sight left him completely and utterly dumbfounded. He wondered what had happened to those dark creatures that were supposed to be so terrifyingly powerful. To be honest, just hearing their name gave the impression that they would be a formidable threat. But in reality, it was a total disaster for them. They were dealt with by a single slap. As she watched, Jan Xiaoyan's eyes began to shimmer with a sudden, newfound intensity. With the child still on his back, Ma Bei delivered a slap that shattered the dark creature, making his heart race wildly. After dealing with the dark creature in front of him, he simply continued to move forward. We must consider the actual strength of the creatures found in this first dungeon. They are hardly worth mentioning, especially since he had awakened his true abilities 3 days prior. To deal with these dark entities, he found that he didn't even need to bother dodging. Any creature he encountered on the path, regardless of their numbers, was taken down with a single, direct slap. Inside the driver's cabin, Jan Nan and his daughter watched as he instantly dispatched the dark creatures. Their initial state of extreme shock slowly gave way to a sense of calm indifference. Jan Nan looked over at Jan Xiaodian with a mischievous, knowing smile. He asked her what she thought of Ma Bei, a question that Jan Xiaodian certainly wasn't expecting. Her face turned bright red as she asked him what kind of nonsense he was talking about. He told her she wasn't a little girl anymore and that it was time to find a boyfriend, which, naturally, surprised her. She reminded him that he used to be completely against her dating at such a young age. He admitted that he had indeed been opposed to the idea in the past. But, upon further reflection, he realized he had a great deal of trust in a young man like Ma Bei. Not only was he incredibly strong, but he also seemed to understand the complex dynamics of power. He truly believed that Ma Bei possessed a strength that was matched only by his keen intuition. He wasn't arrogant or impatient, and to be honest, he spoke in a very pleasant manner. He is a rare talent, and Jan Nan felt he could rest easy if the boy ever became his son-in-law. Jan Xiaodian suddenly felt a wave of helplessness wash over her. Meanwhile, in the thick fog not far behind the truck, Luan and the others were watching the scene before them with rapt attention. As they witnessed the total extermination of the dark forest, they couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. Luan, however, was absolutely furious, his teeth practically chattering with rage. He realized that this bastard had also obtained superpowers, which, naturally, was the last thing he wanted. To him, it was simply unforgivable that Ma Bei appeared to be even stronger than he was. At that moment, a subordinate by his side leaned in and asked what their next move should be. Luan exhaled a heavy, frustrated breath and ordered them to keep following. He told himself that no matter how strong this boy seemed, he was still human at his core. And if he was human, he reasoned, there had to be a limit to his endurance. He believed that if Ma Bei continued to exert himself like this, he would eventually run out of strength. Their plan was simple: follow him and wait for him to find something valuable, then snatch it away. By then, he assumed, Ma Bei would be far too exhausted to put up a fight. After all, there were 5 of them. Surely they could handle one tired man. In the meantime, we see Ma Bei continuing to clear the path ahead. After wiping out another wave of the dark forest, he glanced back with a cold, knowing smile. His senses had become extraordinary, far beyond those of any normal person. He had discovered the presence of Luan and his group quite some time ago. And, to be perfectly honest, he had already seen right through their little plan. Several hours passed by in what felt like the blink of an eye. Ma Bei himself had lost count of just how many dark forests he had cleared away. It was a pity, he thought, that these dark forests weren't actually mutated beasts. They didn't drop any mutated essence. Otherwise, he would have had more than enough to devour several doses. Soon enough, the truck followed him until they reached a massive stone platform. Complex, ancient patterns were deeply engraved into the surface of the stone, and they were glowing with a faint, pulsing red light, almost as if the stone itself were alive. Seeing him stop so suddenly, Jan Xiaotian and her father climbed down from the truck to inspect the platform. We see piles of dark, shimmering metal scattered about, emitting a dim, mysterious luster. These, as it turns out, were all pieces of chaos adamantium. They are, quite frankly, some of the finest construction materials one could hope to find. Their quality and density far exceed anything found back on the blue earth. Mamba decided right then that they should take all of it back to reinforce the villa. Jan Nantian, upon hearing this, didn't waste a single second. He opened the back of the truck and called for the workers to get down and start loading. Meanwhile, watching from the safety of the shadows, was Luan. His men noted that the pile of dark materials didn't look like ordinary scrap. They wondered if this was the right moment to strike, and Luan was thinking the exact same thing. He nodded, about to give the order, when suddenly a loud burst of laughter echoed from nearby. 3 men and 2 women came staggering out of the fog, looking quite unsteady on their feet. "You must be completely out of strength by now, aren't you?" one of them sneered. They were convinced that, in his current state, he was no match for the 5 of them. As soon as those words were spoken, the body of one of the blonde men began to swell violently. He transformed into a mountain of flesh over 3 meters tall, his face twisting into the head of a pig. He began to lumber toward our group, and with every heavy step he took, the earth seemed to groan. With each stride, the ground emitted a dull, thudding sound that echoed through the clearing. That grotesque pig's head, bathed in the eerie glow of the blood-red sun, was a sight to behold. It looked truly terrifying, and the sense of oppression in the air reached its absolute peak. Watching this display of bravado, Mabe simply let out a cold, unimpressed smile. In an instant, a single black wing materialized behind him, sharp and imposing. A feather crackling with electricity shot through the air like a guided bolt. The sharp hiss of the electric current followed closely behind it, cutting through the silence. After a series of rapid hums, the massive mountain of flesh collapsed heavily onto the ground. The companions of Wan Mao stood there, completely dumbfounded by what they had just witnessed. One woman, her hair disheveled and her voice trembling, couldn't help but scream out in shock. "How do you dare to kill someone?" she cried, as if the old rules of the world still applied. Mabe sighed softly, wondering if she truly understood the reality of their new situation. The dark chaos had officially arrived, and the world they once knew was long gone. With that thought, the black wings behind him fluttered gently, preparing for the next move. Several more feathers were unleashed, whistling through the air with deadly precision. The few survivors didn't even have time to cast a single spell to resist him. The powerful electric current was unleashed instantly, leaving them no room to breathe. "Legay, we still have to act," one of them whispered urgently. At that moment, every gaze in the group shifted toward Li Huan, waiting for a lead. Lakanmu muttered to himself that he simply couldn't afford the luxury of offending such a man. "The others are completely stupefied," he thought. "You have to be the one to act. Can't you see the level this man is on? Run, we have to run fast." After Lycon finished speaking, he turned around and began to run without a second thought. Originally, he had planned to wait for Xiao Tianli to recover, hoping to steal an opportunity later. But for Lakanmu, the collective feelings of his group had turned into a very dark premonition. It was a truly terrible premonition that began to weigh heavily on his soul. The feeling was undeniable, a deep, sinking sense that something was very wrong. He had hoped to seize a chance to steal, but who could have guessed the opponent would be so savage? Even after annihilating so many dark beings, he still possessed the power to kill in an instant. Run. They had to run. But just as Lycon took his first desperate step, a single feather fell from the sky, embedding itself in the ground just 3 meters away. Then came the voice of Xiaotian, sounding very much like a demon from the abyss. It echoed slowly through the clearing. "Did I give you permission to leave? Do you truly believe you are destiny itself, or perhaps the mandate of heaven?" Upon hearing that ice-cold voice, every member of Lycon's group began to tremble with fear. They felt as if death itself were watching them. Instantly, a chill ran down their spines, and Lycon's neck tightened as his hands began to sweat. In the sky above, we see Xiaotian with his black wings unfurled, descending slowly like a demon lord from another realm. With every beat of those massive black wings, even the thick surrounding mist began to scatter and fade away. Lycon narrowed his eyes, a flicker of pure panic flashing deep within his pupils. He realized then that it was over. It seemed there was simply no way for them to escape. It was only at that moment that Yin Ruyu and the others finally began to catch on. They reacted as they realized they were being watched, and not just by 1 or 2 people, but by something far more observant. They wondered how Xiaotian could have noticed them. After all, they were all zero-beast warriors, yet they had sensed nothing at all. How on earth did he do it? They began to question if there was a hidden hierarchy among zero-beast warriors. What they didn't know, of course, is that there truly is a vast difference between these warriors. But Xiaotian is not like them. He is far from being an ordinary zero-beast warrior. He is a warrior capable of merging and extracting genetic sequences infinitely, a terrifying advantage, to be honest. He carries 2 more genes in his body than the woman does, making his senses naturally sharper in every possible way. Xiaodian hadn't expected that you would also obtain this particular ability. Lycon offered a strained, "Congratulations, congratulations. It's getting late, so I really must be heading back now. We'll meet again next time, and then the treat will be on me," he added, trying to sound casual. Lycon forced a reluctant smile onto his face, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. And just like that, he was actually about to try and lead his people away. "Did I give you permission to leave?" Xiaodian asked, feeling a sudden, dark burst of amusement at the man's audacity. Before his rebirth, this realm was a complete mystery, as it was the very first time it had ever appeared. Not many people dared to rush in blindly back then. At that time, Lycon was also among the very first to enter the realm to explore it. Later on, most of the treasures within this secret realm were snatched up by this bastard. It wasn't that Lycon's own ability was particularly strong, but rather that the man had powerful backing. Chao Minglong was behind him, and with these materials, Chao Minglong built an incredibly resilient base. Even if many Zero-Beast warriors joined forces, it would be difficult to break through such a defense. Thanks to the high resistance of that base, this guy lived quite elegantly for a long time during the dark turmoil. He hadn't expected that, after being reborn, the same plot would begin to unfold once again. But this time, the construction materials found here, well, we suspect they will have absolutely nothing to do with Chao Minglong. Lycon stammered, asking Xiaodian what he actually wanted, reminding him they were all classmates. He asked if he remembered the time he invited him to dinner or that business with the auction event. He claimed he had been wrong and pleaded that one shouldn't repay evil with more evil. "An eye for an eye never ends," he said, rushing to speak as he noticed Xiaoyan's darkening expression. Trying to awaken some compassion, Lycon kept talking while slowly backing away, ready to flee at any moment. Xiaodian, of course, noticed the other man's subtle little movements. Xiaodian watched those desperate shifts and simply shook his head in disappointment. Then, he brought 2 fingers together and caught a single, sharp feather. Lycon panicked, telling him not to be like this because he had powerful people backing him up. He claimed that Chao was his boss now, and that he was strictly following his orders. "Even if you are very strong now, you are definitely no match for him," he stammered. Lycon's face was pale as he advised Xiaodian not to do anything foolish. While he was speaking, we see him quickly pull out his phone. He dialed a number and, in a desperate move, turned on the speakerphone. After a few agonizing seconds, the call was finally connected. Hearing the familiar voice on the other end, Lycon felt a sudden wave of relief wash over him. The call was active. Surely Xiaodian wouldn't dare to kill him now, would he? The sharp pain he had imagined turned out to be nothing more than a strange numbness. At the exact moment the feather pierced his brow, a powerful electric current surged through Lycon's entire body. His body went rigid, and his eyes were wide with a look of pure disbelief. He couldn't believe this man, this dog, actually had the nerve to attack him. He was a madman. To Lycon, he was nothing but a complete and utter lunatic. "Brotherly, damn it, this guy is dead meat," his companions shouted. They were horrified that he had actually dared to kill Brotherly right in front of them. They knew Boss Cow would never let this go, and so, they decided it was time to run. Seeing Lycon killed so instantly, the rest of the group was struck by an extreme, paralyzing terror. They turned to flee, but Xiaodian had no intention of giving them that chance. He attacked almost simultaneously, sending feathers laced with electricity, flying like a goddess scattering flowers. One by one, they fell in rapid succession. Every single one of them was killed instantly with a single move, before they even had time to speak. The world returns to a brief, uneasy peace. Or it would, if not for that phone lying on the ground. From it, a hoarse and gravelly voice began to emerge, the unmistakable voice of Cao Minglan. He demanded to know who would dare lay a finger on his people, his voice dripping with menace. Even without seeing the scene, hearing the chaos was enough for Cao Minglan to realize his men had been wiped out. You see, he had already acquired the abilities of the retail warriors, granting him an extraordinary sense of perception. Like Xiaodian, he had chosen to build his own faction, a way to find strength in numbers during these cold times. In less than a day, he had recruited 6 warriors, focusing his efforts this time on Hindi. He had specifically dispatched Lycon and 5 others to scout the area and investigate the situation. But now, it seemed that every single one of them had been effectively erased from the board. Calmly, Xiaodian reached down, picked up the phone, and brought it to his ear. Cao Minglan barked into the line, demanding to know exactly who he was talking to. Xiaodian remained silent, which only caused Cao Minglan to grit his teeth in frustration. He continued his threats, swearing that no matter who the stranger was, touching his men was a fatal mistake. He declared him a dead man, yet Xiaodian still offered no response whatsoever. Cao was livid. It was that particular brand of fury that comes from punching at shadows and hitting nothing. He demanded to know where the man lived, shouting for an address so he could settle the score. After a long, heavy silence, Xiaodian finally decided it was time to speak. Since he was already dealing with this opponent, he knew the situation had to be handled properly. When it came to enemies, Xiaodian's philosophy was simple: eliminate them entirely to prevent any future headaches. Otherwise, as the saying goes, the small fry will only end up bringing the big fish to your door. The weak will always bring the strong, which, as we know, only leads to far too many problems. On the other end of the line, Cao Minglan suddenly paused before his anger flared up even more. He scoffed at the audacity of someone asking for his address, mockingly asking if Xiaodian thought he was Suggestion Man. He revealed that he was in an apartment near the Bushin Garden. "Let's see if I kill you first," Cao Minglan spat out, giving away his location without a second thought. He possessed extreme confidence in his own strength, and at that very moment, he was still busy. Continuing to recruit followers, he believed he could gather many retail warriors to his side that day. Even if Xiaodian actually showed up at his door, he wasn't afraid in the slightest. In fact, he was worried Xiaodian wouldn't dare show up, so he deliberately used insults to try and provoke him. "You don't need to try so hard to make me angry," Xiaodian replied calmly. "I've noted your address. When I have a moment, I will come and find you." Xiaodian crushed the phone in his hand and then walked back toward Yen Ruyu and the others. He simply told them to continue moving the resources as if nothing had happened. Yen Ruyu and the rest of the group, however, had not yet recovered from the shock. They had originally thought Xiaodian brought them to Hindi to help, but now it seemed he didn't need them at all. To be honest, they hadn't even been given a chance to intervene. Every single problem had been solved by Xiaodian entirely on his own. It felt as though they were there for nothing, but he had brought them along so they could experience this chaotic world firsthand. In this new reality, showing mercy to an enemy is an act of cruelty toward oneself and those nearby. Meeting the shocked gazes of the two women, Xiaodian suddenly asked if he should have killed them all without leaving a single soul behind. "Don't you think I'm being a bit cruel?" he asked, but Yen Ruyu simply shook her head in disagreement. Speaking quite seriously, she noted that while she hadn't experienced the apocalypse yet, they had already been attacked before. Deep down, she knew that if their skills hadn't been good enough, their own fate would likely have been much worse. Yen Tianjin nodded as well, even though they had only recently awakened their spirit beast warrior abilities and hadn't personally killed anyone. But as we can see, neither of them was the type to be a brain-dead saint in such a world. They understood exactly what needed to be done at every moment, and seeing this, Xiaodian nodded with satisfaction. Having teammates who aren't hopelessly naive is, to be honest, a very good thing in these times. With enemies on a narrow path, the slaughter continued, but it wasn't long before the situation settled. All the King Kong resources were loaded onto trucks, and everyone climbed back into the car, driving away from the base. On the way back, they didn't encounter any other people, but out there in the thick mist, a group of dark creatures began to appear every now and then. These dark creatures were like minor monsters in a game dungeon, which is a rather strange way to view reality. They were constantly respawning, and after watching Xiaodian instantly kill several of them, Yen Tianjin felt he wanted to try it too. Hoping to gain some actual combat experience, Xiaodian agreed to let him take the lead. And so, Yen Tianjin confidently stepped out of the car, took a starting stance, and attacked the two creatures in front of him. We see his muscles bulge across his entire body as his size instantly skyrockets to 3 meters tall. The suit on his upper body was instantly shredded, a small price to pay for such power, one assumes. Then, a pair of horns sprouted from his forehead, and a stream of heat billowed from his nostrils. He lowered his head and charged directly toward one of the dark creatures. With a heavy crash, those sharp horns slammed right into the body of the dark creature. To his utter surprise, Yen Tianjin discovered that his opponent didn't budge an inch from the impact. He reacted quickly, though, shaking off that brief moment of stunned silence. Regaining his composure, he swung a heavy fist directly at the dark creature's head. He was fast, but the creature was faster, landing a massive blow that sent Yen Tianjin reeling. As he stood there dazed, Yen Ruyu watched from the driver's seat, her mouth hanging open in shock. It wasn't every day, after all, that she saw her own father get tossed around by creatures of the dark. Xiaodian, however, wasn't surprised. He knew Yen Tianjin was essentially a pampered wealthy man with no real fighting skills. The man had only just awakened his spirit beast powers and hadn't fully adapted to his new strength yet. Xiaodian initially intended to step in and help him deal with these two dark entities. But he was turned down. Relying on his sheer physical endurance, Yen Tianjin decided to trade blows instead. By enduring damage to dish it out, he finally managed to kill both creatures before limping back to the car. He was gasping for air, his body covered in scars, and looking as though he'd lost half his life in the process. With a bitter smile, he admitted to Xiaodian that he wasn't nearly as good as he thought, having underestimated the struggle. After experiencing the power of these creatures firsthand, he truly realized just how incredible Xiaodian was. To him, a person who could instantly wipe out 6 of those monsters at once was nothing short of a legend. Xiaodian simply offered a quiet smile in response, and before long, the group was back on the move. They drove smoothly out of the forbidden area and finally made their way back to the safety of the villa. Once there, Yen Tianjin ordered the workers to unload the trucks and begin preparing the installation of their new resources. Now that the dark disturbance has begun, they need to turn this villa into a doomsday fortress as quickly as possible. With the resources from the forbidden area in their hands, they now have a much better chance at survival. Xiao Tian spoke up suddenly, noting that it was finally time to start stockpiling food in advance. While our current supplies aren't exactly small, they certainly wouldn't last through a long-term crisis. Yin Tianjin nodded his head in approval, seeing the wisdom in the young man's words. But Xiao Tian shook his head. It wasn't just food they needed, but a vast array of various supplies. Cigarettes, tools, tents, and more. In his mind, the more resources they could gather, the better. Yin Tianjin was stunned at first, but then he understood Xiao Tian's vision for this new, broken world. Food is vital, of course, but other resources are just as indispensable when society begins to crumble. Much like in prison, where cigarettes become a currency for power, the same logic would soon apply here. He realized that his young friend, Xiao Tian, was proving to be quite the strategist. The boy had even thought further ahead than he had, noting that the base's construction was now urgent. He decided to stay and perfect the base, entrusting the gathering of supplies entirely to Xiao Tian. Xiao Tian, I want to go with you too, a voice called out softly. It was Yin Ruyu, standing there with her hands clasped nervously against her chest. Through their recent time together, we can see that this once distant and cold school beauty was changing. The frost that usually covered her expression seemed to be gradually melting away. Though, to be perfectly honest, this warmth was strictly reserved for when she was with Xiao Tian. Xiao Tian didn't refuse her, and so, after gathering a group of workers, the plan was set. He climbed into the car with Yin Ruyu, and they set off once again into the unknown. Watching the large truck gradually fade into the distance, Yin Tianjin's eyes were filled with a quiet worry. He knew that without Xiao Tian's protection, the lives of those workers would surely take a turn for the worse. Deep down, he feared that even protecting himself might prove to be a difficult task. After leaving the villa, Xiao Tian drove toward the largest warehouse in Daru City. As it turns out, this place also happens to belong to the Tianxin group. Initially, Xiao Tian had planned to come here for resources, but the journey was quite long. Furthermore, with the opening of the forbidden area, he had temporarily abandoned the idea. Now, he could only hope that it wasn't already too late to claim what remained. But not long after they set out on the road, an unexpected accident occurred. A fierce-looking old woman suddenly rushed onto the road and lay down right in front of the truck. She clutched her legs with an expression of agony, moaning constantly while muttering under her breath. "Oh my God, someone has been run over," she cried out for all to hear. She demanded that everyone come and see, insisting she wouldn't move without a compensation and supplies. She refused to get up, even threatening to find a police officer to judge the situation. Inside the cabin, Xiao Tian sat in complete and utter disbelief. He truly hadn't expected that, even in these desperate times, someone would still try to fake an accident. Yin Ryu looked at him, wondering if he should go down and handle the situation. She frowned at the absurdity of it all, but Xiao Tian simply told her it wasn't necessary. Xiao Tian shook his head calmly, and then he pressed the accelerator all the way to the floor. The truck let out a powerful roar and headed straight toward the old woman. In his mind, the only way to deal with such wickedness was with a bit of his own. With darkness and riots already spreading, she still chose to come out and play these games. Was she not simply looking for death? After this little incident, Xiao Tian and the others reached the warehouse location without further trouble. We see that the security post outside the warehouse gate stood completely empty. The iron gate, which should have been locked tight, was severely deformed. It appeared as though it had been forced open by some immense external power. Yin Ryu whispered that someone had already beaten them to it. Xiao Tian nodded in agreement and led Yin Ryu inside the warehouse. The shelves, which were originally packed with various supplies, were now stripped bare. The massive warehouse had been almost entirely emptied out. However, further ahead, we find two people currently moving an enormous container. This container looked exactly like the heavy metal cargo boxes found on city trucks. It was essentially a portable storage unit, and it was impossible for any normal person to move it alone. Normally, a vehicle would be required, but these two men simply lifted the massive metal box between them. It wasn't hard to see that they weren't ordinary people either, to be perfectly honest. The two of them had been carrying the box away when they noticed the newcomers. Upon seeing Xiao Tian and his companion appear so suddenly, they stood there, momentarily stunned. One of them asked if they were the people sent by the boss, Xiao, to help them out. Xiao Tian replied by asking if he was referring to Chao Menglong. He realized instantly that it was quite a coincidence to run into Chao Menglong's men here of all places. It made sense, of course. The supplies here must have been moved by that man. The men were taken aback to hear Xiao Tian address Chao Menglong so directly by his full name. The two men realized instantly that Xiao Tian and his companions were certainly not part of their crew. Without a second thought, they dropped the heavy metal container right where they stood. The box hit the ground with a dull, heavy thud that echoed through the empty space. It seemed they had received a direct order to enter battle mode immediately. A pair of furry ears sprouted from the man in front, while his fingernails sharpened into lethal claws. Two fangs gradually lengthened in his mouth as thick hair began to rapidly cover his entire body. As for the other fellow, his body swelled up until he had transformed into a literal mountain of flesh. Now, we should note that pork is a staple in the local diet here. Consequently, after the dark upheaval began, many people awakened as spirit animal warriors related to the pig. Even so, while they all share that porcine lineage, their powers can vary wildly. For instance, the man standing before us has focused his defensive capabilities to the absolute maximum. Xiao Tian didn't seem to mind the transformation and simply asked for Chao Menglong's current location. Even though Chao Menglong had already given him a location, our protagonist knew it was better to be cautious. Deep down, Xiao Tian wasn't entirely sure if the information he had been given was actually the truth. The man sneered, telling him that if he wanted the boss's location, he'd have to go through him first. He boasted that he was about to show the young man the true extent of his superpowers. With a loud roar, the pig-like spirit warrior charged directly toward Xiao Tian. Yin Ryu had witnessed Xiao Tian's strength before and had seen his incredible abilities in action. Yet, being in the heart of the city and facing Chao Menglong's men, she couldn't help but feel a bit nervous. Xiao Tian merely shook his head as black wings sprouted from his back, launching a single feather like a projectile. With a sharp whistling sound, the feather pierced straight through that mountain of flesh. We see a powerful electric current flowing constantly over the layers of fat. In the very next moment, the massive mountain of flesh exploded, ending his life instantly. After handling the situation so calmly, Xiao Tian turned his gaze back to the other man. To be honest, anyone would be terrified by that look, and this man was no exception. He begged Xiao Tian not to kill him, promising to tell him absolutely everything he wanted to know. Xiao Tian narrowed his eyes and asked once more for the location of Chao Menglong. At that point, the man completely lost his nerve. A yellowish liquid began to drip slowly from his trousers onto the cold floor. An acrid, pungent smell gradually began to fill the air around them. He wondered what kind of monster this youth was, considering he hadn't even entered his beast state yet. The thought was terrifying. If he was this strong now, his beast form would be far worse. Deep down, he knew it was utterly impossible to resist an opponent of this caliber. He stammered that the boss was right next to the 5-star gardens. Specifically, he was inside the Nebula apartments, in room 288. The man finished speaking with a trembling voice and looked at Xiao Tian with a desperate glimmer of hope. He insisted that the location was correct and that Boss Chao was definitely there. Having confessed everything, he pleaded to be allowed to leave with his life. Xiao Tian simply extended his right hand, plucked another feather, and tossed it casually. The feather flew like a lethal arrow, piercing the man's forehead and leaving him to die with his eyes wide open. We have to remember that these two men had already prepared themselves to attack him. If he had been less skilled, or if they had managed to overpower him, would they have let him go? The answer, quite obviously, is no. And so, Xiao Tian attacked without a single shred of guilt weighing on his conscience. Let's go. We're heading to the 5-star gardens. Xiao Tian retracted his black wings and calmly gave the order to Yin Ryu. Yin Ryu nodded, still somewhat dazed, as she followed closely behind the terrifyingly strong youth. She felt that by his side, even if she had to climb mountains of blades or cross seas of fire, she would remain exceptionally calm. Even knowing they were heading straight for Chao Menglong's base, she didn't feel the slightest bit of fear. The two of them left the warehouse and returned to the car. After setting the navigation, they set off into the changing world. Fortunately, as this was only the beginning of the chaos, the internet and basic infrastructure hadn't been fully impacted yet. Everything still functioned normally, and the 5-star gardens weren't far from their current location. In less than half an hour by car, they arrived at their destination. Along the way, our travelers saw many supermarkets and shopping centers in total disarray. Thick, dark smoke was already beginning to rise from several of these buildings. From time to time, the sounds of distant combat echoed through the streets. But Xiao Tian didn't care about any of that. His only focus now was dealing with Chao Menglong. At the 5-star gardens, Xiao Tian had just stopped the car when a burly man in a jacket, cigar in mouth, appeared. He stepped out from the adjacent apartment building, flanked by a group of rough-looking thugs. "Are you Chao Menglong?" Xiao Tian asked, looking at the man with an utterly emotionless expression. The moment he heard that voice, Chao Menglong instantly recognized exactly who Xiao Tian was. This was the bastard who had killed 5 of his men, a fact he wasn't likely to forget. He had assumed the threat was just talk, never expecting the boy would actually dare to show up with only one companion. By contrast, his own side boasted 8 men, and every single one of them was a beast warrior. "Everyone, prepare for battle. Kill this bastard and avenge our fallen brothers." Chao Menglong raised his arm and shouted, promising a reward to whoever could take the boy down first. The prize? 3 large cases of canned meat, something most people would usually consider mere junk food. But in the current darkness and chaos, such a thing had become an absolute and rare luxury. After all, it was easy to store and convenient to use, making it worth its weight in gold. Once the offer was on the table, his subordinates began to cheer loudly, as if they'd been injected with adrenaline. The way they looked at Xiao Tian gradually shifted from mere hostility to a sort of crazed hunger. Simultaneously, they all entered their beast states, taking on the characteristics of pigs, dogs, cows, and sheep. These traits manifested physically. Some grew sheep's hooves, while others simply began to swell in size. They transformed into hulking giants or became covered in coarse fur, looking quite ominous indeed. "Xiao Tian, are we really going to be okay?" Yin Ruyu watched as the men grew larger and more monstrous, their shouts echoing with a hormone-fueled intensity. They were beast warriors, and the aura they radiated after their transformation was truly terrifying to behold. Yin Ruyu was clearly worried, but Xiao Tian didn't answer. He simply kept his piercing gaze fixed on Xiao Menglong. He didn't activate his beast state just yet. Instead, he was thinking, calculating every possible escape route his opponent might try to take later. Now that we've found the enemy's hideout, Xiao Tian naturally wanted to exterminate every last one of them. He had no intention of leaving any hidden dangers behind, so he had to block off every potential path of retreat. Otherwise, this whole trip would have been a complete waste of time. But Xiao Tian's hesitation looked like pure cowardice to Xiao Menglong, who immediately let out a mocking laugh. Die! Xiao Menglong roared, lunging forward first and swinging a heavy punch directly at Xiao Tian. Xiao Tian showed no fear at all and met him with a punch of his own. Their fists collided with a dull, heavy thud. The impact sent sparks flying, yet neither man budged an inch the moment their knuckles clashed. In that instant, Xiao Menglong's arms began to transform, becoming covered in a strange, protective layer. His limbs were rapidly encased in a shimmering defense, shifting and hardening as the transformation took hold across his entire reach. He boasted that his ability allowed him to condense fish-scale armor directly onto his arms. According to him, not even bullets could penetrate that defense. To fight him hand-to-hand was, in his eyes, simply playing with fire and waiting to get burned. Seeing Xiao Tian's silence, Xiao Menglong became even more reckless, continuing to provoke our protagonist. He warned that Xiao Tian would regret this for the rest of his life, demanding he hand over the base's resources immediately. If he complied, the boss claimed he might just let him have a quicker, easier death. Seeing their leader acting so fierce, the subordinates behind him began to flatter him one after another. They cheered that Boss Chow was incredible for daring to challenge this bastard so directly. It seemed to them that they wouldn't even need to act, as Boss Chow could clearly handle him alone. They mocked Xiao Tian as a fool who didn't know the vastness of the world or the trouble he was in. Watching from the side, Yin Ryu bit her lip, her clever face clouded with a touch of worry for what was to come. Xiao Tian, however, remained completely expressionless as blood flowed over his shoulder, suddenly condensing into the shape of a ferocious catfish head. Its scarlet eyes seemed to glow, emitting two piercing rays of light that cut through the tension of the battlefield. Without warning, the creature opened its blood-stained maw and clamped its teeth firmly onto Xiao Menglong's arm. Xiao Menglong didn't even bother to dodge, convinced that ordinary attacks had no hope of breaking through his absolute defense. But he was in for a shock. The moment the catfish head bit down, its sharp fangs ignored his scale armor entirely, sinking deep into his flesh. Immediately after, a powerful suction force erupted, beginning to frantically drain the blood right out of his body. It was then that Xiao Menglong finally began to panic, realizing far too late that Xiao Tian's blood was anything but simple. He tried to back away and apologize, but Xiao Tian held him fast, pressing down on his shoulders with both hands. He was trapped firmly in place, forced to feel the life essence constantly flowing out of his veins. A biting cold began to spread gradually through his entire frame as his strength withered away. Utterly unable to resist the pull, he grew more and more anxious, his bravado vanishing in an instant. He desperately pleaded for him to stop, cursing in terror as he felt his life slipping through his fingers. He stammered out an apology, terrified and wondering what kind of monster he had actually challenged. And those, as it turned out, were the very last words Xiao Menglong would ever speak in this life. Xiao Tian offered no reply, silently continuing until he had absorbed every last drop of his opponent's blood. Once the process was complete, Xiao Tian could feel a surge of renewed strength coursing through his own body. Even the electric eel head resting on his shoulder now carried a faint, crimson tint from the feast. And just like that, it was over, leaving Yin Ryu standing there in a state of complete and utter daze. Seeing Xiao Menglong drained dry by Xiao Tian was, to be honest, a massive and terrifying shock to her system. Speaking of which, it seems Yin Ryu still has no idea what kind of animal Xiao Tian has actually awakened. He can absorb blood, release lightning, and even condense a pair of wings from thin air. It appears no such creature exists on Blue Star, a fact made clear as Xiao Menglong's dried corpse finally hit the ground. The small-time lackeys who had been waving flags and cheering just moments ago froze in their tracks. They were all utterly dumbfounded. Their boss had been perfectly fine only a second ago. And yet, in the very next heartbeat, he had been drained until he was nothing more than a withered husk. They struggled to understand what this meant, staring at the young man who now looked more like a monster. Terrified, they realized he wasn't human and their only thought was to run for their lives. This was the exact same thought shared by every single one of them at that very moment. Xiao Menglong's strength had been the greatest among them, their absolute pillar of power. Since even he was killed instantly, this group had no weapons or were left to offer any resistance. And the moment they turned their backs to flee, they essentially sealed their own fates. It was practically an announcement of their deaths as Xiao Tian stared ahead expressionlessly, black wings sprouting once more. However, after absorbing Chao Menglong's blood, those black wings now carried a strange, crimson tint. In the next instant, several feathers shot out simultaneously, beginning a ruthless harvest of the fleeing men. Against these low-level opponents, the scene quickly turned into a completely one-sided slaughter. Not long after, Xiao Tian successfully ended the battle, and the heavy atmosphere finally began to settle. Only the lingering scent of blood in the air and the many corpses on the ground remained as evidence. Yen Ryu looked at Xiao Tian in a daze. The metallic smell made her nauseous, but deep down, she understood. In these times of absolute chaos, this kind of brutal outcome has become perfectly normal. She knew that if she wanted to gamble on a chance for survival, she had to change. Fighting is inevitable, and she realized she couldn't simply hide behind Xiao Tian forever. Like a frightened bird, she will eventually have to fly alone, so she was forcibly suppressing her fear. She fought the urge to vomit, and seeing her resolve, Xiao Tian was actually a bit surprised. He remembered his own first time before his reincarnation, seeing someone torn to pieces by a mutant right before his eyes. Their internal organs had been scattered everywhere, and the warm blood had sprayed across his face. That kind of physiological instinct is incredibly difficult to suppress, even for the strongest. Xiao Tian had vomited back then, so he hadn't expected Yen Ryu, a refined young lady, to endure it so well. With the greedy ones finally eliminated, we see the focus shift back to the task at hand. The supplies should be inside the apartment, so he ordered everyone to get off the truck and start loading. Xiao Tian looked away and gave the word, simply saying, "Fine." Yen Ryu nodded and opened the back of the truck, calling the workers over to begin the unloading process. When they finally made it inside the apartment, they indeed found the massive stockpile Chao Menglong and his men had hoarded. The workers were absolutely euphoric, carefully moving the various supplies as if they were made of glass. One by one, the cardboard boxes were carried out. They contained food and basic necessities, but in this world, they were treasures. To be honest, the value of these supplies is now far greater than any amount of gold or diamonds. Gold can only decorate, but this food is what will truly help Yen Ryu strengthen her awakening abilities. She isn't suited for direct combat, and the villa still needs Yen Tianshun to stay behind and guard it. They estimated that about 5 trips would be enough to transport every last bit of the supplies. But just as everyone was getting into the rhythm of the work, an unexpected accident occurred. Suddenly, a massive mutant beast lunged out, blocking the truck's path entirely. It was a mutated wild dog, its fur bristling like countless silver needles. Its powerful, sturdy limbs gripped the pavement firmly, ready for action. With its body leaning slightly forward, it stood before the truck, baring its teeth in a silent threat. As if sensing an imminent attack, Yen Ryu honked the horn several times, but the beast didn't flinch. This was no ordinary stray dog, and obviously, it wasn't going to be scared off so easily. If anything, those loud blasts only served to awaken the opponent's ferocity. Seeing the truck stopped in the street, the mutant beast prepared to pounce upon them. Xiao Tian didn't waste time with words. He simply opened the car door and stepped out. The moment he stepped out, 8 more massive mutant beasts emerged from the alleys on both sides of the street. Every single one of them was a stray dog that had undergone a terrifying mutation. We should remember that most mutant beasts appearing in the city were once common household pets. As social animals, these dogs maintained their pack habits even after transforming into monsters. And now, this entire pack was planning to swarm Xiaotian all at once. We are currently in the early stages of the Dark Chaos outbreak. At this point, the levels of these mutant beasts are generally not very high. However, the beast hunting warriors are in the exact same situation, still finding their footing. If this were any other hunter, I suspect their legs would be shaking uncontrollably by now. But Xiao Tian felt no fear at all. He had seen far worse in his previous life. And then, those ominous black wings unfolded from behind him, ready for the hunt. His entire body soared into the air, and tree roots and feathers shot out, instantly piercing through the bodies of many first mutation beasts. This time, the feathers didn't release a strong electric current. Instead, pale red threads appeared, connecting the beasts back to Xiao Tian. Xiao Tian controlled the feathers from above, unleashing a powerful and sharp force upon the first mutation beasts standing before him. We see their bodies wither rapidly before our eyes, and in no time at all, they were drained until they became nothing but dry husks. When facing the darkness, Xiao Tian actually had a chance to win, but the 3 types of genes within him were complicating matters. The strain was significant, but now, after absorbing the blood of these beasts, all the energy Xiao Tian had consumed was fully replenished. After finishing his work, Xiao Tian approached the corpses and reached out to search them, finally pulling out several transparent golden cores. These, as it turns out, are the golden cores of first mutation beasts. Stored deep within them is the very source of power that fuels these mutated creatures. Once absorbed, a warrior can significantly improve their own strength. However, the process usually takes time and consumes a great deal of energy, much like the slow forging of steel. It typically requires constant, patient work, but Xiao Tian is a different case entirely. A wild, frantic energy suddenly manifested in the palm of his hand. He directly and forcibly devoured the golden core and then chewed it, making a distinct crunching and grinding sound. A harsh, breaking sound echoed as the hard golden core was easily crushed and swallowed by the mouth in Xiao Tian's palm. A surge of pure power flowed into his body, and just like that, Xiao Tian's level began to shift. Xiao Tian, level, bloodline level 5. Genetic sequence number 3 in 1. Genetic sequence number 3 in 1. Genetic sequence number 3 in 1. Genetic sequence number 4 in 1. He inherits the trait of limb regeneration and extends a pair of wings. He releases lightning feathers, absorbs blood from the air, and continues to strengthen his body for the battles ahead. Opening the system interface, Xiao Tian saw his level had jumped directly to level 3, reaching the strength of a retail warrior. This gourmet level, as it happens, is a significant turning point for any fighter. Xiao Tian didn't pay it much mind, though. What truly caught his eye was a new interface bar that had appeared. He wondered what this bloodline level meant, and why his own was currently sitting at level 5. Unable to figure it out, and being a seasoned player after all, he simply stopped overthinking, returned to the car, and left with Yenryu. After transporting the supplies back and forth 6 times, we see that the shipments were finally completed. The villa's warehouse was now almost entirely full. When Yin Tianjin looked at these supplies, his expression changed completely. His eyes were full of smiles, knowing that with these provisions, they wouldn't just survive for a long time. They would actually live well, especially after listening to Yen Ryu recount their journey. After hearing how Xiao Tian killed Chao Menglong and the others, Yin Tianjin's respect for the young man doubled. He told his friend Xiao Tian that with these supplies, they could easily survive for 2 or 3 years. Yin Tianjin noted with a smile that, for now, they weren't facing much of a shortage. Xiao Tian simply shook his head, wondering how many more supplies they could actually gather. The more, the better, he thought. After all, who would ever complain about having too much? Besides, he had plans for these goods. You see, Xiao Tian already had his own specific arrangements in mind for everything they had collected. Setting everything else aside, the specific supplies Xiao Tian needed were his top priority. He felt he had to get his hands on as many of them as humanly possible. After using his combat abilities, Xiao Tian found himself feeling absolutely famished. After consuming over 10 kilos of raw meat, he finally finished his meal and headed out once more with the group. He kept himself busy until sunset, and by the time he was finished, Xiao Tian had practically looted every warehouse and shopping center in the vicinity. As for the life and death of others, to be perfectly honest, he felt it simply had nothing to do with him anymore. In this strange new world, he knew he only needed to look out for himself. We should remember that before his rebirth, Xiao Tian was just an ordinary man. Back then, he still had a few packs of instant noodles tucked away at home. Out of the kindness of his heart, he originally shared those noodles with his neighbors. At first, the neighbors were grateful, but as the food began to run out, things took a dark turn. The inherent cruelty of human nature gradually began to reveal itself. Those same neighbors banded together to hoard the food and, believe it or not, actually kicked Xiao Tian, the original owner, out into the cold. One could say that Xiao Tian's eventual death in the jaws of mutated beasts was a direct result of his neighbor's betrayal. Human nature rarely stands up to scrutiny, so after being reborn, Xiao Tian decided he would never play the saint again. As night falls, we see that the buildings remain as dangerous as ever. By now, everyone is aware of the existence of mutated beasts and the so-called Zero Warriors. Even though the power lines are still working for now, most people huddle in the dark, too afraid to even turn on a light for fear of attracting unwanted attention. Xiao Tian's villa, however, is a different story. The lights are blazing, and the rich aroma of roasted meat begins to drift through the air. Under Xiao Tian's direction, a luxurious end-of-the-world barbecue dinner is being methodically prepared. That scent of grilled meat gradually spread throughout the entire villa district, naturally catching the attention of many hungry eyes. Before long, an uninvited guest appeared at the front of the villa. The visitor was a middle-aged man dressed in a formal suit, looking quite out of place in the apocalypse. He appeared to be around the same age as Yin Tianjin, and the fact that he lived in a neighborhood like this told us everything we needed to know about his status. It's not as simple as it looks. Lao Yin, I haven't had a hot meal all day, the man pleaded. Could you please give me some food? I'm begging you. Upon seeing his visitor, Yin Tianjin immediately broke into a cheerful, knowing smile. This man was his longtime competitor, the founder of the Real Group. His company was only slightly inferior to the Tianjin Group, but after hearing Xiao Tian's warnings about the coming darkness, Yin Tianjin had chosen to believe. He had begun reinforcing the villa on the principle that it's better to be safe than sorry, while simultaneously sending people to buy food on a massive scale. As it turns out, this fellow had run into him back then and mocked him, claiming he had gone completely mad. He couldn't understand why a chairman worth hundreds of millions wasn't at the office, but was instead here hoarding supplies. At that time, Yin Tianjin wasn't entirely sure if Xiao Tian's words were true. He had simply endured the ridicule, feeling quite suppressed, but now, seeing his rival's haggard face and desperate appearance, well, all that lingering frustration in his heart had long since vanished. The chairman of the Real Group? How could it be possible that you have no food? Don't joke with me here, Yin Tianjin said, as Wan Dylan's expression turned increasingly bitter. I really have no food. Everything in my villa has already run out. I won't take your food for nothing. I can trade for it, he said, desperate to make a deal. He took the watch off his wrist and held it out to Yin Tianjin. This is a Patek Philippe worth 3 million. I just want to trade it for one full meal, he pleaded, while Yin Tianjin simply stood with his arms crossed. Boss Wan should know that in this new world, famous watches are worth absolutely nothing. Wan Dylan grew anxious and hurried to add more to his offer. I still have a Cullinan in my garage. I have a Lamborghini too. I'll give it to you. I'll give you everything, he promised. Seeing an old competitor wagging his tail and begging like this, well, it was a truly wonderful feeling. Yin Tianjin looked over at Xiao Tian. Friend Xiao Tian, you were the one who brought all these supplies here. Now, what do you think we should do? At first, Xiao Tian said nothing at all. Xiao Tian remained silent for a moment before laughing. Aha, what do you think, Boss Yin? You aren't going to give it to him. Xiao Tian laughed again. In that case, don't give him anything. Yin Tianjin simply shrugged his shoulders. Turning back to Wan Dylan, he said, Boss Wan, it seems I can't help you either. Wan Dylan's face darkened instantly as he roared. Yin Tianjin, are you even human? Do you really plan to just let me die? Just at that moment, other bosses from the villa complex began to appear one after another, arriving at the scene. They looked anxiously at the food inside. Boss Wan was disheveled, while inside, meat sizzled on the grill, a stark contrast to their own isolation. Are we not still neighbors? Help us out a little. We are all human beings after all. How can you be so heartless? Do you have no humanity left? The others all echoed the sentiment. Suddenly, the muscles across Yin Tianjin's entire body swelled, transforming him instantly into a massive minotaur. A powerful jet of hot air erupted from his nose, signaling his growing impatience. Outside, a resonant roar exploded through the air, shaking the very foundation of the villa. Their eardrums nearly shattered. Faced with the terrifying sight of the Minotaur warrior, no one dared to stay, and they scattered like frightened birds. In that moment, Yin Tianjin suddenly sighed. Most of the people here were wealthy businessmen and local elite families. When he first started his business, he had been their target frequently, and his company was nearly taken by force. He never expected this day of revenge. It was deeply gratifying. Later, the Tianjin group became a leading power in Daxia. Though in a law-abiding society, he couldn't have done much. But things are different now. The old order has collapsed, and if he truly desired it, none of these bastards would survive. Xiao Tian simply smiled at the situation. He could understand it, in a way. After the tension passed, the barbecue party continued, and everyone savored the delicious meat, but Xiao Tian headed upstairs to rest early. To be honest, he no longer has any interest in cooked food. These days, he only cares for raw meat. Back in his room, after Xiao Tian finished cleaning his hands, he began to contemplate his future plans. He had secured the materials to reinforce the villa and plenty of supplies. Now, it was finally time to increase his own strength. Down in the courtyard, everyone carefully savored the meal that was so difficult to come by. Xiao Tian's generosity only strengthened their collective resolve to follow him. At that moment, Yin Tianjin approached Yin Ryu and asked her directly to tell him the truth. Did she have feelings for Xiao Tian? Ryu set down her wine glass, her face flushing red. She whispered, asking her father what he was talking about, as she couldn't easily admit her interest. Seeing her awkward expression, Yin Tianjin spoke with a touch of helplessness. He told her she must realize that everything they have is thanks to young Xiao Tian. While he is good to them now, what would happen if he chose to ignore them one day? He believed Xiao Tian was a man of strength and strategy. He suggested that if she was interested, she should take the chance to solidify their relationship right then and there. If she became his wife, they would all have a better chance of survival in this chaotic world. It wasn't just that Yin Tianjin was in a hurry. He knew Xiao Tian's worth. In this new world, a man like him could have any woman he wanted. They had the advantage of proximity for now, but if another woman stepped in first, they would surely regret it. Yin Ryu, being quite intelligent herself, fell into deep thought after hearing her father's words. In reality, she felt a strong attraction to Xiao Tian as well. Before she could even finish her thought, Yin Tianjin began pushing her toward the villa. Confused, she asked what he was doing, and he told her he was taking her to Xiao Tian's room. He wanted them to confirm their relationship as soon as possible. A trace of shyness crossed Ryu's beautiful face. She could hardly believe this was her traditional father speaking. Previously, he had been terrified of her dating too early or meeting the wrong types, and now he was rushing her to take the initiative. It was quite a bold move, really. Even though she liked Xiao Tian, they hadn't had much contact yet. The idea of rushing into his bed just to secure their future felt a bit overwhelming to her. Just as Ryu was wondering what to do, a Cadillac pulled up in front of the villa gate. A blond young man stepped out, his face lighting up with surprise upon seeing her. He called out that he had finally found her. Seeing the newcomer, Yin Tianjin's expression gradually darkened as he recognized the man standing there. It was Li Jin-san, one of Ryu's persistent suitors. Yin Tianjin understood the enthusiasm of youth, but he considered this particular young man to be a complete oddity. an orphan with poor grades who happened to attend the same university as Ryu. He wondered how such a person dared to pursue his precious daughter. We recall the answer this bold and inexperienced young man once gave Yin Tianjin, that by winning Ryu over, he could skip decades of hard work and reach the top. He believed that if he could just conquer Ryu's heart, he'd prove his worth and eventually manage the entire Tianjin group. How could anyone say he lacked goals? At the time, Yin Tianjin felt nothing but disgust and had the nuisance chased away, but now, this persistent scourge has somehow tracked them down again. Seeing Yin Tianjin's darkening expression, Li Jinsan simply smiled. With a touch of newfound arrogance, he announced that he had become a hunter-warrior. He claimed he had come specifically to confess his love to Ryu, believing he was finally good enough for her, while completely ignoring the older man's growing fury. Li Jinsan then opened his trunk and pulled out a few miserable cans of food, all of which, we should note, were already well past their expiration date. He bragged about how difficult they were to obtain, suggesting that since food is so scarce now, Uncle Yin should take them as a gift. He continued rambling about the costs of dating and his marketing background, making increasingly strange and inappropriate comments about his supposed future with the family. He seemed convinced that the meager resources he brought were a fortune, acting as if he were bestowing a great blessing upon them with his presence. As he kept talking, it became clear he had no sense of reality, and Ryu herself felt a deep sense of shame that such a man was courting her. Yin Tianjin stepped in front of his daughter, his protective energy practically radiating off him as he stared down the intruder. In that moment, he felt a very sudden and very strong urge to simply eliminate the idiot standing before him. Li Jinsan, oblivious to the danger, began boasting about his resources, telling Uncle Yin that the current state of the world wasn't anyone's fault. He advised the older man to calm down, reminding him that he was now a high-level psychic warrior, a title he wore with far too much pride. He claimed an ordinary man like Yin Tianjin couldn't possibly hurt him, though he magnanimously added that he wouldn't fight back against his future father-in-law. With a smirk, he told the older man that if he was truly that angry, he should go ahead and try to strike him. He offered to stand perfectly still and take 3 punches, if only to help the old man vent some of his frustration. He declared that no matter what happened, Ryu was his woman and he would be the one to protect her for the rest of her life. By this point, Yin Tianjin was at his absolute breaking point, his patience having evaporated long ago. Hearing Li Jinsan spew such nonsense was the final straw. He simply couldn't endure another word from the man. His body returned to its normal state for a brief second before swelling up once again. He transformed into a muscular minotaur, standing 3 meters tall and exuding pure power. Li Jinsan, who had been so calm just a moment ago, was left completely dumbfounded. "Good God, it turns out you are a psychic warrior as well," he stammered. "Then we shall do exactly as you suggested. Prepare to receive my 3 punches. If you can take them, I will give you Ryu's hand in marriage," Yin Tianjin said, gritting his teeth through every word. He then took a heavy step forward, closing the distance between himself and Li Jinsan. Li Jinsan swallowed hard. To be honest, he was suddenly feeling entirely unsure of himself. He was technically a psychic warrior, yes, but physical strength was certainly not his forte. As a combat warrior, he had been struggling lately, having always been forced to rely solely on himself. He worked hard just to lose weight, but it felt like working one day only to face 3 days of back-breaking labor. In his mind, there simply wasn't a single opportunity left for him. Just before the dark chaos broke out, things were looking truly dire for our young friend. He had gone to the dumpster outside the school to scavenge for scraps, and eventually, he found a dead rat. So he roasted it and ate it. Now, the ability he has awakened is, quite literally, the power of a rat. His sense of smell has been greatly enhanced, which is useful, we suppose. He can sniff out the location of food, and those expired cans were exactly what his nose led him to. Usually, the abilities people awaken in this world are quite impressive. We see others with limitless strength or bodies that have become practically divine. There are even those who change their destiny against the heavens themselves, but he, unfortunately, is the exception. Before the dark chaos, he was nothing more than a street rat, and after the chaos began, well, he truly became a rat. But even as a rat-type retail warrior, he isn't exactly a natural in battle. Still, his physique is significantly stronger than that of an ordinary person. He originally thought that his status as a retail warrior would make Yin Tianjin respect him, but he never expected the other man to be one too. And a much more impressive one at that. Watching Yin Tianjin approach step by step, Li Jinsan began to panic. His body might be slightly more formidable than a commoner's, but he certainly cannot withstand an all-out attack from Yin Tianjin. Never mind taking 3 hits, just looking at the other man's massive frame tells the whole story. He calculates that a single punch could send him flying. No. Uncle Yin, please, we are all civilized people here, he pleaded. Realizing he cannot escape, he simply turns around to leave. He had originally planned to use force if Yin Tianjin didn't agree to his terms. After all, the old order has collapsed now. In this new world, strength is king. He just didn't expect this to be the outcome. How foolish. Even now, he wonders if he hadn't eaten that dead rat back then, would he have awakened differently? Perhaps he could have become a different kind of retail warrior. Unfortunately, there are no do-overs in this world. Before walking away, Li Jinsen suddenly stops and turns back one last time. Uncle Yin, I would be good to Ryu, he says. Are you really not going to reconsider? Even if you are a retail warrior yourself? Ryu is still just an ordinary person, after all. She won't suffer if she follows me. To be honest, that is the absolute truth. He kept rambling about his status as a retail warrior until Yin Tianjin finally snapped, instantly grabbing a nearby barbecue grill in a fit of rage. He hurled it toward the Cadillac with a deafening crash. The impact was so violent that the car was instantly deformed. Watching this, a sharp pang of genuine pain flashed through Li Jinsan's heart. He had bought that car himself after 8 long years of saving. It was a $3,000 used vehicle, paid for in 24 installments. And he had only just finished paying off the very last of the car loans. Uncle Yin, I'm leaving, he shouted, but you are going to regret this. Li Jinsen fled clumsily, clutching a pile of expired cans as he made his escape. He couldn't help but scream one last time over his shoulder, while Yin Tianjin only regretted that he didn't have wings. Otherwise, he would have flown over to tear that brat to pieces. Originally, tonight's barbecue feast was supposed to be a cause for celebration. But that cursed creature really had to show up just to disgust him. What terrible luck. He felt that a person like that didn't even deserve to think about Ryu. How could he even compare to young Xiaodian? He wasn't worth a single hair on the boy's head. He told himself that even if Ryu had to stay alone forever, he would never hand her over to such a useless man. Seeing Li Jinsen depart, Yin Tianjin returned to his normal size and looked at Yin Ryu and the elders with deep concern. Ryu, think about it carefully yourself. It is better that we act sooner rather than later. Right now, we must make sure we hold on tight to this important man. We see that Yin Ryu wasn't actually resisting the idea. She was simply feeling incredibly nervous. She nodded slightly, remembering that an evolved warrior's constitution far exceeds that of ordinary humans. Deep down, she worried that since Xiaodian was so powerful, she might not be able to handle him. But a moment later, Yin Ryu shook her head vigorously to clear those intrusive thoughts. After all, she is Yin Ryu, the woman famously known as the ice-cold flower of her school. She wondered, with no small amount of embarrassment, what kind of strange things she was thinking about. Meanwhile, after fleeing the villa and reaching a safe distance, Li Jinsen finally came to a halt. He looked back toward the house, twitching his nose as a trace of pure malice flashed in his eyes. He realized there were actually massive amounts of supplies hidden away in the villa's warehouse. He wondered if the old man had known about the dark upheaval in advance to have prepared so well. Originally, he told himself, if they had become a family, everything would have been perfectly fine. Their things would have been his, but since they refused him Ryu, he felt no need for mercy. He had warned them, after all, that they would regret rejecting him. A dark, somber expression settled over Li Jinsan's face as he hatched a new plan. He pulled out his mobile phone and, naturally, began recording a video for the world to see. Friends, he announced to the camera, I have explosive news about the hidden food supplies at the Tianjin Group Villa. He claimed they were feasting while others starved, boasting that his rat-type awakening gave him a special edge. His sensitive sense of smell was no joke, which, in this world, was a rather unfortunate talent to have. As we know, there was currently a desperate shortage of supplies across the entire region. Almost every supermarket and shopping center had already been completely looted by the panicked masses. When people reach a certain level of hunger, we see them often transform into irrational beasts. He knew that as long as the news continued to spread and ferment, chaos would follow. This place will definitely be watched now, he thought with a dark grin. He couldn't wait for the moment the villa's resources were looted. Then, they would finally understand. How dare Yin Tianjin look down on me like that? He looked at his expired cans, things no one wanted now, but that would soon change. Soon enough, he was certain they would be begging him to give them even these. Thinking of Yin Tianjin kneeling to offer him Ryu, Li Jinsen felt a surge of twisted excitement. Then, his figure blurred as he moved, vanishing into the deep shadows of the streets. After Li Jinsan's video was uploaded, it quickly went viral across the internet, as these things often do. It caused a massive sensation. Though most were skeptical, resources had become far too precious to ignore. Many decided it was better to believe than not, and began eyeing the villa with greedy intent. Yin Ryu and the others, however, were still completely unaware of the storm brewing against them. On the following day, our protagonist Xiaodian was abruptly woken up by Yin Tianjin. He asked if something was wrong with the villa's reinforcements, wondering if there was a problem. Xiaodian was dragged into the living room, rubbing his eyes and asking in a state of complete confusion. He noted that the King Kong alloy at the base could be molded before it fully set. Logically, there shouldn't have been any issues, or so he told himself, at least. It isn't about the King Kong alloy, the older man explained. It's about the villa itself. Xiaodian, my friend, we have a problem. Our hidden supplies in the warehouse have been exposed. It was Ryu and I who dragged you into this mess, the older man admitted with a heavy sigh. Yin Tianjin felt a twinge of guilt as he handed the phone over to Xiaotian to show him the news. Xiaotian took the device and glanced at the screen, seeing the headline, The Villa of the Tianjin Group President. The post claimed that he was stockpiling a massive amount of resources behind those reinforced walls. Xiao Tian took a closer look and realized the post had already caught the attention of far too many people. Should we post a video to debunk these lies right now? Yenryu asked, her voice trembling slightly. She spoke with a look of absolute seriousness, feeling deep down that she was the one who had endangered Xiao Tian. The main culprit behind all of this, of course, was that absolute bastard Li Qinshan. She wondered how he could have known for certain that the villa was storing such a vast amount of supplies. Yenryu was filled with regret, the kind that comes from not pulling a weed out by its roots when one has the chance. She told herself that on that fateful night, she should have let her father set everything aside to finish him off. Trying to deny it now would only make them look guilty. After all, a guilty conscience needs no accuser. Xiao Tian simply crossed his legs and sat back on the sofa, a calm smile playing on his lips. In reality, he explained, this matter isn't nearly as grave as it appears to be. To be honest, solving a problem like this is actually quite simple if you know what you're doing. Upon hearing those confident words, the mother and daughter both turned their gazes toward him in surprise. They knew very well what the world outside had become, a place where the old rules no longer applied. We see that social order is gradually collapsing, leaving nothing but the law of the strongest in its wake. Out on the streets, one can see people openly looting resources from supermarkets and shopping centers. And among those looters, there are now many powerful evolution warriors looking for their next score. Now, the news that they are sitting on a massive stockpile of resources has spread like wildfire. To make matters worse, the reinforcements for the base's defenses haven't been fully completed yet. If a group organizes and comes looking for him, the situation will become quite complicated indeed. We know Xiao Tian is incredibly strong. So far, every time he has fought, it's been an instant elimination. But what happens when 10 hunter warriors show up, or perhaps 30 of them at once? As long as enough people come, he will eventually be overwhelmed, and even someone as strong as Xiao Tian could be defeated. With such a vast amount of resources at stake, what would happen if 30 warriors attacked? If enough people gather, it's estimated that even a man of Xiao Tian's caliber would have a difficult time. But they don't realize that this kind of thing isn't actually a problem for Xiao Tian at all. This is simply how one feels when they possess absolute strength, completely unbothered by the noise. Last night, he was already thinking about how to quickly increase his power even further. At this current stage, the only way to rapidly grow stronger is by hunting down mutated beasts. He needs to absorb the golden crates that these mutated creatures leave behind. However, while Dara City isn't a top-tier metropolis, it is still a significant urban center. There aren't many wild animals here originally. The mutated beasts appearing are mostly former pets. To kill them, one would have to track them down one by one, a tedious task, to be honest. And we must remember, it is currently only the very beginning of this dark chaos. The level of these mutated beasts isn't particularly high yet, which limits their value. The experience they provide after being slain isn't much to write home about either. And so, the news continues to spread that the villa is a treasure trove of stored resources. The news has been revealed, and strangely enough, it gives Xiaotian a bit of inspiration. Xiaotian, what should we do now? We'll all listen to you, she says, looking for guidance. Yenryu looked at Xiaotian seriously, waiting for a plan, and he simply told her to start a live stream. Xiaotian took a sip of hot water and repeated with total indifference, just go live. Yenryu and Yin Tianjin looked at each other, complete confusion written in their eyes. A live stream at a time like this? To be honest, it seemed like a very strange move indeed. And yet, because of their absolute trust in Xiaotian, they didn't question him further. They moved quickly to set it up. After all, there wasn't much else they could do now. In Dara City, people were already discussing forming an alliance to go and rob the villa. It is at this exact moment that Yenryu begins her broadcast to the world, which, naturally, was going to cause quite a massive stir among the desperate viewers. It's Yenryu. She's the girl from my university, someone shouts in the comments. The crowd recognizes her, angry that she's hiding resources and now has the nerve to go live. They ask who gave her the courage, complaining that while they suffer, her family hides a fortune. They call her selfish, claiming that despite her beauty, she must have a very dark heart. The screen fills with insults, selfish, indifferent, malicious, as the mob watches with growing apathy. Yenryu remains expressionless on the outside, though deep down, she is feeling the weight of it all. Then, Xiaotian suddenly steps in and asks for the camera, and Yenryu nods, handing it over. As the lens points toward Xiaotian, the viewers are left wondering, who is this guy? No one seems to know him, only that he is there, inside the Yin family villa. Impossible, someone types. The beautiful Yin has never even been in a relationship. The comments demand they stop talking and start distributing the resources fairly to everyone. They warn the family not to even think about hoarding everything for themselves. We see Xiaotian look directly into the camera with a perfectly calm expression. His next words are a total bombshell. Yes, I have plenty of resources here, and I won't be hoarding a thing. Upon hearing this, a look of pure shock flashes across the faces of Yenryu and her mother. To be honest, she had considered many possibilities for his plan, but not this. The one thing she never expected was for Xiaotian to admit the truth so openly. What kind of move is this? With his admission, the live chat absolutely explodes with activity. Gradually, more and more people begin to flood into the live stream to see the spectacle. Xiaotian remains unfazed, leading Yin Ryu straight to the warehouse doors where the supplies are kept. And then, under the stunned gaze of Yin Ryu and the viewers, he throws the doors wide open. Instantly, a mountain of supplies comes into view, so vast it's almost impossible to take it all in. Everything has been meticulously sorted and placed neatly on the shelves and counters. There is every kind of food imaginable, fresh meat, and even luxuries like cigarettes. For a single person, these supplies would easily last for several decades of consumption. At the sight of such abundance, the crowd in the live stream goes into a complete frenzy. Good God, one viewer writes, there really are that many supplies in there. Others are furious, cursing them for hoarding so much and having the nerve to broadcast it. They feel insulted, wondering if he is mocking them now that the world has ended. Why do they get to eat the good stuff while we're stuck eating bran? One person demands. Another adds that they haven't eaten in 2 days, wondering how it's possible for them to have so much. Meanwhile, in a rented apartment, Li Qinshan watches the live stream with a look of pure, malicious glee. He has no idea who Xiaotian is, but he finds him incredibly bold for daring to broadcast such a hoard. Is he really not afraid that people will come to seize everything for themselves? In this new world, order has collapsed and looters have become the law, unless something unexpected happens. By the end of the day, the villa's location will be exposed, along with every resource in that warehouse. Everything will be snatched away by the crazed mob, he's certain of it. She thinks to herself that if he had just agreed to her terms, she never would have exposed these supplies. Calling him an ungrateful fool, she waits for the moment he comes crawling back to beg her for help. We see Xiaotian take his phone and shamelessly walk through the warehouse, putting every item on full display. He looks directly into the camera and continues, acknowledging that he knows exactly what they want. He tells them he's willing to give the supplies away, but, and here is the catch, not for free. If they want his resources, they will have to trade mutated beast crystals for them. With that, Xiaotian asks for a pen and paper and begins to write, 1 level 1 mutated beast crystal. That can be traded for a pack of cigarettes, a tin of carp, or even a bottle of sushi sauce. Higher quality crystals fetch even more, and to be honest, the warehouse is practically overflowing with options. Xiaotian spends the next half hour personally setting the prices for every single item in his inventory. But seeing Xiaotian act like a businessman only makes the crowd in the live stream even more furious. They feel that in a world like this, his behavior is nothing short of an insult, don't they? In this era where order has collapsed, he wants to trade goods, and now, we all know the truth. Since there are so many supplies here, wouldn't it be much easier to simply steal them? One viewer curses, calling him an idiot and vowing that he is already on his way to the villa. He promises that when the time comes, he will kill Xiaotian like a dog. Watching this wave of growing rage, it seems the mob wants to eat Xiaotian alive. Xiaotian, however, pays no attention to the comments, waiting instead for the perfect moment. Once he is satisfied, he immediately asks Yin Ryu to end the live broadcast. Yin Ryu frowns, asking if this was truly the solution he had in mind. With a look of deep concern, she tells him this isn't solving the problem, it's inciting a riot. By actively flaunting his wealth, he has invited those who only wanted to loot the supplies before. Now, losing everything would mean the end for Xiaotian, and she knows it. In her eyes, this behavior is nothing less than declaring war on every independent warrior out there. To her, the purpose of this broadcast was essentially a death wish. It was as if he were saying, I have resources, so come and try to kill me for them. She fears that by tomorrow, they will both be in grave danger. Xiaotian explains that this is the only solution he could devise, as resources are limited. He believes the best course of action is to use these resources to actually accomplish something. They need supplies, and we need a safe, profitable business, he says with complete calm. But she wonders, does he really believe they will trade their crystals for supplies honestly? Yin Ryu can only manage a bitter smile, which, to be honest, is a perfectly reasonable reaction. Haha, Xiaotian let out a couple of dry chuckles, sounding quite amused by the situation. Suddenly, his gaze turned deep and serious, as if he were looking far into the future. He explained that he had already spoken to them about the logic and the rules of this new world. If they refuse to comply, he will simply slaughter them all, a bit of emotional blackmail, one might say. Kill them all. We have to wonder if Xiaotian truly understands the risks of such a bold claim. The reason he dares to do this is entirely due to the absolute confidence his immense strength provides. We must remember that this is only the beginning of the dark upheaval, and the stakes are still rising. At this stage, the general level of the survivors isn't particularly high, certainly not compared to him. Having fused 3 genetic sequences, he can strike down and humiliate these independent warriors whenever he pleases. It is a simple choice. They either trade their crystals for supplies honestly, or they die. Seeing Xiaotian so confident, Yin Ryu and Yin Tianjin decided it was best to say nothing more. Although they were still a bit worried, they were more inclined to trust in Xiaotian's judgment. Deep down, they sensed that he knew something they didn't, and that this wasn't just simple foolishness. How is the reinforcement of the villa coming along? Xiaotian suddenly asked, changing the subject. It's almost finished, Yin Tianjin replied, noting there was only a small section left to strengthen. He said with a smile that everything should be completed by the end of the day. These materials taken from the gold mine turned out to be remarkably easy to mold and shape. One only needs to secure them properly within the walls of the villa to create a fortress. He had even personally tested the hardness of the material to ensure their safety. After the reinforcement, even a full-strength attack couldn't cause so much as a tiny dent in the walls. The strength of the walls was absolutely undeniable, more resistant than any material he had ever seen before. Seeing this, Xiaotian nodded in approval, walked out to the courtyard on his own, and lay down on a lounge chair. He took a moment to soak up the sun, which is a wonderful thing, though unfortunately, in the later stages of this upheaval, the sun will eventually cease to exist. An hour later, we see the first group of people arrive. They reach the villa, but they weren't there to cause trouble. They were just a group of scattered warriors. As it turned out, they were a group of figures quite familiar to Xiaotian. These people were actually all of Xiaotian's relatives. We should note that Xiaotian's parents had passed away early in his life. He had always relied on himself and worked hard at his studies, which makes him a bit similar to Li Qingshan. And yet, these relatives chose to betray him when he was going through his most difficult moments. Unexpectedly, every single one of them had now appeared right here at his doorstep. Xiaotian, we all saw your live broadcast, they called out. You're so incredible now that you've managed to accumulate all these supplies. You are the pride of our family, a middle-aged man said, stepping forward with a wide smile. This was Xiaotian's uncle, Xiao, and seeing him lead the way, the other uncles and aunts rushed to flatter him as well. Xiaotian simply scoffed. He could guess the intentions of this group with his eyes closed, or his toes, for that matter. Sure enough, a moment later, Xiao lowered his hand and signaled for the group to settle down. Then, as he approached the gate, he said with a sudden, oily smile, Xiaotian, we are all family here. Blood is thicker than water, and since you have so many supplies, it's only natural that you'd help us out a bit. But Xiaotian had to wonder, why on earth should he help them now? Xiaotian simply scoffed, feeling that even speaking to them in person was a complete waste of his breath. He spat out a single word with utter indifference, leave. Upon hearing this, the expressions on the faces of Xiao and the others shifted instantly. Xiaotian, I am your uncle, Xiao cried out. Are you really going to just stand there with your arms crossed? I saved your life once, Xiao shouted angrily, claiming that Xiaotian's mother had borrowed money from him for medicine. He insisted that if he hadn't lent her that money, Xiaotian wouldn't even be standing here today. Xiaotian's mouth hung open slightly. For the first time, he was genuinely shocked by his uncle's sheer shamelessness. It truly makes one wonder how a person could possibly be so devoid of shame. Get out of here quickly if you don't want to die, Xiaotian said, taking a deep, steadying breath. We can see his anger rising. If it weren't for the fact that these people were related to him by blood, he would have likely started a massacre a long time ago. Fine, 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 Xiao shouted, feeling no remorse whatsoever for his words. He repeated the word 3 times, his voice trembling with a misplaced sense of fury. Suddenly, he turned to the crowd behind him and shouted at the top of his lungs for everyone to hear. This ungrateful son doesn't want to help us, so we'll just have to take what we need ourselves. He called out for all the independent warriors in the group to step forward and begin the hunt. Let's attack together, he urged, and seize all the resources from this place first. As soon as he finished speaking, 5 people emerged from the crowd, simultaneously entering their beastly states. Then, Xiao himself began his transformation into a beastly form. His right arm transformed directly into a meter-long blade with a sharp, whistling sound. He raised his head to look at Xiaotian, but just as he was about to voice a threat, he saw Xiaotian's figure vanish into thin air. When he finally reappeared, he was already standing directly in front of him. Such incredible speed. It seems our protagonist is also a retail warrior. Xiao was caught completely off guard and instinctively tried to scramble backward. To prevent him from creating any safe distance, Xiaotian grabbed his right arm and pulled with terrifying force. With a sickening snap, Zhao's right arm, tendons and all, was torn away by Xiaotian's sheer, raw strength. Blood erupted like a fountain, and Xiao screamed, calling him a cursed beast. He shouted that Xiaotian was the shame of the family, even bringing up his parents. He spat out that it was no wonder they had died so young. He blamed everything on Xiaotian, calling him an ungrateful wolf. Xiao howled in agony, but being a retail warrior, he didn't pass out. Instead, he wildly flailed his remaining arm. As the man spoke with such venom, Xiaotian's expression grew darker until he finally slammed a fist into the man's chest. He punched straight through the heart, causing Zhao's expression to freeze as his screams came to an abrupt halt. After a few final convulsions, he slumped to the ground, completely motionless. The other warriors nearby, despite their strength, found themselves swiftly dealt with, their throats slit in an instant. The crowd was horrified. He was killing people over the slightest disagreement. They wondered if he was some reincarnation of a god of death, even if they had tried to manipulate him. In their minds, they were still relatives, and they couldn't understand why he was being so absolute over such a small matter. To them, he was killing in cold blood, proving himself to be nothing more than an ungrateful wolf. And so we see that this young man is a retail warrior of a truly different caliber. We'll attack together. I don't believe he can resist us all, they shouted, hoping for strength in numbers. They warned him that the live broadcast had already begun and that in no time, someone would arrive to seize the supplies. Instead of giving them to outsiders, they argued, why shouldn't they take them for themselves? The remaining 5 spoke loudly, and while Xiao Tian remained expressionless, a hint of mockery touched the corner of his mouth. Very well then, if they were going to force his hand, he would have to kill them. As Xiao Tian's black wings unfurled, rocks, trees, and feathers were sent flying in every direction. Like a goddess scattering flowers, though a rather grim one, the stench of the aftermath quickly began to spoil the appetite. With the matter settled, Xiao Tian returned to his chair and sat down as if nothing had happened. He spoke to Yin Ruyu, who simply nodded and began to give her own instructions. Our protagonist sat there calmly, ordering the workers to begin cleaning up the scene. Deep down, he felt absolutely no sympathy for these people. Xiao Tian had already given them a chance. It was a pity they naively thought they could suppress him. To be honest, Yin Ruyu actually found herself admiring his decisive personality. She was no saint herself, and she appreciated that he didn't waste time beating around the bush. In his world, the moment you cross the red line, you die instantly. And who could blame him? This is exactly how one must act to survive in the apocalypse. Just after the scene was cleared, Yin Tianshun found Xiao Tian to report some excellent news. The reinforcements for the villa had finally been completed. Now, every corner of the villa, including the underground foundations, was encased in adamantio. Even if it were bombarded with missiles, breaking through the villa's defenses would be absolutely impossible. Even against the direct assault of a retail warrior, the villa would now remain perfectly safe. Very well then, at this point, the shelter could finally be considered truly established. In the future, it would be seen as the ultimate place to settle down and find peace. Xiao Tian nodded, but as they were chatting, a motorcade of cars arrived at the villa gates. The vehicles screeched to a halt, and over 10 people stepped out with an air of smug self-importance. With a furious roar, Xiao Zhan shouted for Xiao Tian to hand over the supplies immediately. He warned him to wash his neck and prepare for death if he refused to comply. It seemed Qin Jing was doing everything in his power to break through their defenses. Hearing this roar, Yin Ruyu frowned slightly and activated the monitors inside the villa. The television in the living room immediately displayed the scene unfolding just outside the gates. We see the caravan of cars parked aggressively right at the villa's entrance. More than 10 people stood there, radiating an intense and threatening energy. And then, one by one, they all entered a terrifying, beast-like state. That frightening aura rippled through the air, creating a constant, sharp, whistling sound. They were all retail warriors, 13 of them in total, to be precise. Watching this, Yin Tianshun felt his breathing quicken just a little bit. Yin Ruyu wasn't calm either. Seeing so many retail warriors joining forces was a rare sight. In any normal situation, such a force would deliver a devastating blow to anyone in an instant. Both women turned their gaze toward Xiao Tian, waiting for his reaction. Yin Tianshun, being a refined Confucian scholar and a wealthy merchant, was simply not built for fighting. Since he no longer knew how to speak or listen, he had only awakened a healing plant-like ability, leaving him with no combat power. As for the other workers at the villa, only a mere handful of them had actually awakened as retail warriors. Now, they could only rely on Xiao Tian. However, seeing his completely indifferent expression, the two women couldn't help but feel uneasy. And so, Yin Tianxin asked him directly, "Friend Xiao Tian, in your opinion, what should we do now?" Xiao Tian simply sat on the sofa, snacking on a piece of raw meat as if it were popcorn while he watched the television. He remained there, casually eating while watching the screen, and calmly told them that they didn't have to do anything but watch. Xiao Tian didn't plan to act yet. The villa's upgrades were just finished, and he wanted to see exactly how strong the defenses were. He wondered, could it truly withstand the combined assault of these 13 retail warriors? To him, these 13 individuals were nothing more than a convenient whetstone to test his new blade. If his memory served, with these diamond-grade materials, those warriors wouldn't break the defense even if they fought to total exhaustion. Upon hearing Xiao Tian's confident words, Yin Ruyu and the other woman nodded, and their expressions finally began to relax. They all knew the villa's current strength was terrifying, but facing the joint attack of 13 retail warriors was another matter entirely. Deep down, they still weren't entirely sure if the walls could actually resist such a concentrated onslaught. Outside the villa, we see the 13 men still screaming at the top of their lungs, calling out for Xiao Tian. They taunted him, calling him a coward and demanding that he come out quickly to meet his death. These men shouted until their faces were red and their veins were bulging. Yet inside the villa, there was only silence. There was still no movement at all. Seeing that Xiao Tian had no intention of coming out, the group finally began to grow impatient. Brother Xiong, looking at the crowd gathered there, finally spoke up. He boasted that their current physical strength made them invulnerable to weapons and that bullets could no longer easily penetrate them. He claimed that even a concrete wall 3 meters thick could be brought down with a single punch. Breaking into this villa would be far too easy, or so he claimed. He warned them that this kid wasn't simple. Apparently, he had obtained retail warrior powers and kidnapped Yen Ryu before the dark turmoil even began. There had already been a conflict with the army, so he urged everyone to be extremely cautious when they finally faced the boy. Their plan was simple. They would unite their forces to kill him instantly. Xiong Tao reflected on this for a moment before giving his solemn instructions. He was the one who had gathered the 12 retail warriors present to achieve this goal. He was certainly no fool, and he understood perfectly well that it was better to be safe than sorry. One of them told him not to worry, arguing that even if the kid was tough, there were 13 of them. They were retail warriors, after all. They could just charge in and finish the boy off. And once he was gone, all the resources in the villa would belong to them. He told them to stop talking nonsense and suggested they all attack together. Everyone's spirits were high, and the mere thought of the riches inside the villa filled them with fervor. If they could secure these resources without any trouble, they could live comfortably for a very long time. Without wasting any more time, Xiong Tao took a decisive step forward. He threw a powerful punch directly against the villa's front door. But to everyone's surprise, the image of a buckling, deforming door never appeared. Instead, we see Xiong Tao's brow furrow in sudden confusion. He let out a cry of pain, cursing under his breath because that blow should have shattered even the strongest security door. Yet, in reality, he hadn't even managed to make the villa's door shake. Not even a little bit, a sight that left the other 12 retail warriors staring in disbelief. They were all somewhat stunned, wondering what on earth Brother Xiong could possibly be doing. Could it be that he really couldn't open a simple villa door with a single punch? They asked if he was joking or perhaps just trying to give them all a good laugh. Xiong Tao's face turned pale. He took a deep breath, gathered every ounce of his strength, and threw another punch. With a sickening crack, he actually ended up fracturing the bones in his own hand this time. Xiong Tao's features twisted in agony, and cold sweat began to bead across his forehead. He endured the pain and looked up toward the sky, unable to believe what was happening. The others looked at one another, their mouths hanging wide open in a series of rather interesting expressions. He shouted with forced bravado that the door was strange and they should all attack it together. Without any more nonsense, they all unleashed their hidden power and lunged toward the entrance. A series of shrill explosions echoed through the air as they struck the barrier. But after their combined assault landed, the door remained perfectly still without so much as a scratch. Not even a single dent appeared, and suddenly, the reality of the situation began to sink in. They wondered what kind of mockery this was, as a door this resistant shouldn't even exist in this world. Inside the villa, Xiao Tian finished the raw meat in his hand, wiped his palms, and let a small smile curl his lips. The villa door was already reinforced with King Kong material, proving his theory was correct. The strength of the King Kong sequence is immense, making it nearly impossible for those outside to break through. Yen Ryu also breathed a sigh of relief, grateful that everything had come together at the critical moment. The fortification of the villa was finally complete, and with the protection of King Kong, they were safe. The villa had become a true fortress, leaving the men outside to finally wake up to the truth. Not even a single dent appeared on the surface. Truly, not even a scratch was visible. The power of the King Kong sequence had fully manifested, and they were now under its protection. As that immense strength took hold, we see them finally shielded by the legendary power of King Kong. It seems the villa door had become something else entirely. And as the barrier held firm, the men outside finally woke up to their grim reality. Despite their best efforts, not a single dent appeared, not even the slightest mark. The King Kong sequence had been unleashed, and now they stood safely behind its protection. That formidable strength had taken root, providing them with the absolute defense of King Kong. We watch as the power of the King Kong sequence finally settled into place, granting them safety. This newfound strength had fully emerged from within the structure, and they could finally breathe easy under the protection of King Kong. The sequence's power had been deployed, and the villa was now shielded by that legendary force. With the King Kong sequence active, they were now safely tucked away behind its protection. The strength of King Kong had been fully realized, offering them a defense that was quite literally unbreakable. And so, the power of the King Kong sequence spread through the very walls, leaving them now securely under King Kong's protection. That immense force had taken over the entire entrance. The King Kong sequence had done its job, and they were now safe within its embrace. That overwhelming power had manifested, and the protection of King Kong was now absolute. The strength of the sequence had been unleashed, and they were finally safe behind the shield of King Kong. The strength of King Kong surged forth, and they were now fully under King Kong's protection. As that power deployed, the shield of King Kong took hold, wrapping the entire entrance in an unbreakable defense. The legendary sequence had finally manifested, leaving them safely tucked behind the protection of King Kong. With the strength of King Kong unleashed, the villa was now an impenetrable fortress. It was time to begin the operations, and Yen Tianxin nodded in silent agreement. Yen Ryu took a deep breath, skillfully opened the live stream on her phone, and pointed the camera at the scene. As soon as the broadcast went live, a massive wave of viewers began to flood in, one after another. Upon seeing the confrontation unfolding before them, the audience began to cheer and celebrate the chaos. They were thrilled. After all, 13 retail warriors had arrived right at his doorstep. Many believed Xiao Tian was finished, laughing at the inevitable downfall of the man who had so much. They wondered who he thought he was, being so arrogant while flaunting such a massive hoard of supplies. He even dared to show it on a live stream, seemingly unaware that a tall tree always attracts the wind. To them, his punishment had arrived, as one man could never be a match for 13 seasoned warriors. Someone in the chat recognized a face, asking if the man in front was Xian Tao and who he actually was. The viewers begged for an explanation, wanting to know which animal ability this Xian Tao had awakened. With his new self-defense capabilities, he had been looting resources since the very first day of the Dark Chaos. He had even wiped out several small military teams. He was, by all accounts, a truly ruthless man. The consensus was clear. Xiao Tian was doomed, as the Dark Chaos had already consumed all of Lanxin. The people of Lanxin had given this disaster a name, the Dark Chaos, referring to the humans who gained animal genetics. These humans were known as retail warriors, while the mutated animals, plants, and insects were called mutant beasts. Under the watchful eyes of the massive livestream audience, Xian Tao and his 12 retail warriors finally made their move, launching a coordinated strike against Xiao Tian. These men didn't hold back, attacking with a ruthless cruelty and using lethal techniques right from the very start. Their goal was simple, to completely annihilate Xiao Tian in a single, decisive instant. Suddenly, 3 gusts of wind sliced through the air, instantly piercing through Xiao Tian's right arm. 3 bloody holes appeared prominently on his limb, with fresh blood bubbling out for all to see. The sight alone was enough to make one's own arm ache, but Xiao Tian simply turned to face the man covered in sharp quills before charging directly at him. The attacker's expression shifted to one of pure terror. He tried to retreat, but Xiao Tian was already standing right in front of him. He reached out with his right hand, and a sharp, terrifying mouthpart emerged from his palm, tearing through the man's clothing. Like a biological vacuum, it latched onto the man's chest and began to frantically drain his blood. The man screamed in horror, wondering what kind of devilish thing was happening to him and what Xiao Tian was doing. He struggled desperately to break free, but it was all in vain. In that moment, Xiao Tian looked as if he hadn't eaten in days. He seemed to be savoring the sweetness of the fresh blood, and as the life force was drained away, the man's body began to change. He withered away before our very eyes, the light fading from his gaze until he was nothing more than a shriveled corpse, squeezed dry of life. Witnessing such a bloody and brutal scene, the entire audience fell into a stunned silence, wondering what kind of dark power they were seeing. To see a living person drained of blood right before them, it made them wonder exactly what animal genetics this young man had awakened. After all, there seemed to be very little difference between this and a literal vampire. One of the warriors called out to Brother Xian, urging him to look at the wound on Xiao Tian's arm. At that exact moment, everyone's attention shifted back to the protagonist as someone pointed toward him in disbelief. They all stared intently, realizing they were dealing with a threat far greater than they had initially imagined. It was enough to make one's skin crawl. Thin strands of blood erupted from Xiao Tian's injured arm, rapidly knitting the flesh back together. As it turns out, this young man also possesses the remarkable ability to heal himself. We have to wonder, could he have also obtained the power of the leech? Xian Tao narrowed his eyes, for there had always been something he couldn't quite understand. He watched closely, trying to piece together the mystery that had been bothering him for some time. On the eve of the aurora sweeping across the blue star, he himself had swallowed an ordinary leech. However, the leech he devoured was merely a blood barrier, nothing more. It was the result of removing the entrails, coating it in flour, and frying it, hardly a gourmet meal. He hadn't swallowed it raw like Xiao Tian, but regardless, Xian Tao realized he could no longer afford to delay. He needed to resolve this quickly, especially since his opponent could mend his own wounds. He decided the boy must be killed in one stroke, ordering his men to attack together at any cost. With a roar, Xian Tao led the remaining 11 warriors as they all charged toward Xiao Tian at once. His plan was simple, to suppress Xiao Tian through the sheer, absolute advantage of numbers. Xiao Tian stood with his back against the wall of a fierce cave, cornered but far from defeated. Suddenly, he rose from the ground as a grotesque electric eel head emerged over his shoulders. In that moment, he looked like a demon king descending upon the world, grotesque, strange, and utterly terrifying. Under the fading light of the sunset, countless black feathers were suddenly fired into the air. They fell like a rain of pear petals, a beautiful sight if it weren't so incredibly lethal. Within that striking image, an absolute and cold murderous intent was hidden. There was no time for the warriors to resist, and certainly no time to let out a scream. In an instant, they were riddled with holes like sieves, meeting a tragic and immediate end. Even in the finality of death, the faces of many still wore expressions of pure desperation and terror. This included Xian Tao himself, despite possessing that remarkable ability to heal his own wounds. He too was killed instantly, never even getting the chance to mend his broken body. Even Yin Ruyu, who had tried to prepare himself for the worst, was caught off guard. He stood there completely stupefied, unable to stop his hands from trembling as he clenched his fists in secret. We have to admit, Xiao Tian is truly powerful. They are both authentic warriors, after all. But this level of strength seems impossible. How can one man be so overwhelmingly dominant? What kind of animalistic ability has he truly obtained? To be honest, this simply doesn't feel human anymore. It defies logic. A total of 13 hunter warriors, including a man as ruthless as Xian Tao. Were they really all killed just like that? One can't help but wonder what is actually happening here. It feels like a cheat, as if he's playing by an entirely different set of rules. After witnessing such a brutal scene, the people watching the live stream were left in shock. A heavy silence fell over them. They had assumed 13 warriors would be more than enough to crush Xiao Tian. Unexpectedly, this was the result, a twist far too dramatic for anyone to have predicted. Xiao Tian's fluttering wings finally stilled as he landed back on the solid ground. And then, he looked directly into the camera lens and spoke with a chillingly calm voice. He stated that he has plenty of resources, and those who don't fear death are welcome to try their luck. We see now that Xiao Tian's decision to let Yin Ruyu broadcast this wasn't arbitrary at all. Naturally, he wants to use the live stream as a deterrent to keep the world at bay. His message was clear, he has what they want, but they would be wise not to covet it. It is better that you don't bother me, he warned, adding that otherwise, people would truly continue to die. And we can see that this live broadcast has obviously achieved exactly what Xiao Tian expected. The original spiteful comments from those mocking him vanished instantly, leaving no trace behind. It was as if everyone in the stream had suddenly lost their fingers, as the flood of messages simply stopped. He repeated his offer. If they wanted resources, they could use gold boxes to trade with him. The more gold boxes they brought, the more resources they could take home. As Xiao Tian spoke again, his words immediately allowed many people to feel a glimmer of hope once more. Xiao Tian's strength is simply too overwhelming. 13 retail warriors were completely helpless against him. What else could they do? But if they could simply trade gold boxes for what they needed, well, then the idea was certainly worth considering. Someone finally asked if the exchange was truly legitimate. Is this actually true? A lone comment suddenly appeared in the live chat. Xiao Tian glanced at the screen, assuring them with total indifference that as long as they had gold boxes, they could come to him for resources. Upon hearing this confirmation, many people realized they were broke. But even those without money began to hatch plans. This, in fact, was Xiao Tian's original goal for collecting resources. By monopolizing the resources, he could essentially force everyone to work for him. We must remember that retail warriors have different levels as well. Naturally, the higher the level, the greater the strength of the warrior. However, the number of retail opportunities in the early stages is small, and the experience gained is quite limited. Instead of hunting and killing for retail gains himself, he decided it was better to let everyone else do the killing for him. They would do the hard work, and then use their gold boxes to trade for his resources. Meanwhile, he would use those resources to trade for the gold boxes needed to level up. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement, really. After a long silence, Xiao Tian slowly raised his eyes. He went on to say that besides gold boxes, Li Qinshan's head could also be traded for resources. As soon as Xiao Tian said this, the viewers in the live stream became instantly restless. If someone is an enemy, then it is a fight to the death, plain and simple. Xiao Tian already knew the truth, having heard it directly from Yin Ruyu. It was Li Qinshan who had leaked the news about the massive stockpile of supplies in the villa. The man had to die, but Xiao Tian had far too many things on his plate to do it himself. Since his own power was so great, it seemed a bit unnecessary to go out and hunt the man personally. It was much more appropriate to leave this little task to the masses on the internet. People began to wonder who Li Qinshan was, as the name didn't ring a bell for everyone at first. Then they remembered, he was the guy who had exposed the villa's resources in the first place. One viewer called him a cursed bastard, realizing he had almost followed Xian Tao's group to the villa. He hadn't gone to loot the supplies, thank goodness, but the thought alone was terrifying. Otherwise, as we can imagine, he would probably be dead right now. The sentiment in the chat shifted quickly. They were now in a blood feud with that traitor. They began to ask if Li Qinshan's head could truly be used as currency. Could they really trade it for supplies? The comments in the live stream began to fly wildly once again. Everyone expressed their doubts until they finally received a firm, affirmative answer from Xiao Tian. The crowd reached a boiling point, for Xiao Tian's command was clear: bring him the head of Li Qinshan. Could a single head really be exchanged for a massive crate of life-sustaining supplies? We have to consider the context. With the dark outbreak having just erupted, resources had become incredibly scarce. The most powerful hunting warriors had already begun to frantically hoard every scrap of food they could find. This, naturally, made the already limited resources even harder for the average person to come by. To put it simply, even basic instant noodles, so common in normal times, couldn't be bought now, no matter how much money you had. Currency had been reduced to mere scrap paper, yet here was Li Qinshan's head, suddenly worth a fortune in supplies. This realization drove the crowd into a literal state of madness. Immediately, countless people answered the call, abandoning their shelters one after another to hunt for Li Qinshan's whereabouts. And so, a viral trend of searching for the traitor swept across the entire internet. Order had collapsed, and the world had returned to a state where the weak were simply prey for the strong. Killing had become a common occurrence, and there was no longer any legal responsibility to worry about. Trading ahead for a mountain of supplies was, to be honest, a very profitable business venture. Li Qingshan watched the entire process, staring at the live stream as the comments buzzed in his ears like a swarm of hornets. He stared at the words Li Qingshan's head over and over until he was left utterly speechless by the absurdity of it all. He felt a sudden, biting chill as an unprecedented wave of fear washed over him. How could this be happening? How could his plan have backfired so spectacularly? Li Qingshan clutched his head with both hands, muttering to himself like a man who had lost his mind. Deep down, he had only wanted to use others as a knife to do his dirty work. He couldn't understand how it had come to this. In his mind, none of this was actually his fault. To him, the blame lay entirely with Xiao Tian for being such an unnatural, terrifying monster. He knew he had to beg for forgiveness, as his current hiding place, though relatively secluded, could still be found by warriors with special tracking abilities. To prepare for the search for his whereabouts, Li Qingshan took a moment to steady his breathing. After a brief internal struggle, he decided to call Yen Ruyu. Back at the villa, Yen Ruyu looked down at her phone and saw the caller ID. It was Li Qingshan. She looked up to inform Xiao Tian before finally pressing the answer button. The voice on the other end stammered, calling out for Ruyu and Xiao Tian, or rather, Brother Xiao. He pleaded for her to hand the phone over, assuming Xiao Tian was right there beside her. He claimed he had something important to discuss, unaware that Yen Ruyu already had him on speakerphone. Xiao Tian, naturally, heard every single word. Taking the phone, Xiao Tian spoke softly, simply confirming that he was indeed speaking to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan immediately went on high alert, breaking into bitter tears as he claimed he had been blind to Xiao Tian's true greatness. He insisted it was all a misunderstanding, a classic excuse, of course, and that he finally realized the gravity of his mistake. With the military collapsed and order gone, he knew there was no point in trying to call the police anymore. The only solution he could see was to beg for Xiao Tian's mercy in hopes of being granted a second chance. It was a pity for him, however, that Xiao Tian was certainly no Mother Teresa. Deep down, Xiao Tian knew that if he had been the weaker one, Xian Tao and the others would have beaten him to death without a second thought. The moment Li Qingshan revealed that the villa was stocked with supplies, the line had been crossed. Both parties were now sworn enemies, the kind that simply cannot exist under the same sky. And yet, Xiao Tian suddenly remarked that he was actually a very easy person to get along with, and that everything was open for discussion. Li Qingshan could hardly believe his ears, asking if he was truly serious. Upon hearing Xiao Tian's words and sensing an intention to forgive him, Li Qingshan was instantly and pleasantly surprised. Of course it's true, Xiao Tian replied, pausing for a moment as if reflecting on the situation. He then noted that, under the circumstances, it wasn't exactly convenient to chat over the phone. He asked for the current address, suggesting he go there to discuss everything in person, which, naturally, changed the tone of the conversation. Li Qingshan nearly dropped his phone in shock at the suggestion. Asking for his location at a time like this felt like a very different kind of invitation. He couldn't help but wonder if these peace talks were just a lie to find him and finish him off. He nervously told Brother Xiao not to joke, certain that revealing his address would be his death warrant. Li Qingshan's mind began to spin frantically, searching for a way to prove his worth. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as he remembered his role, claiming that he too was a logistics soldier. He admitted he wasn't much of a fighter, but insisted his sense of smell was exceptionally sharp. He promised to help search for various supplies, provided Xiao Tian was willing to grant him forgiveness. From that moment on, he swore to honor Xiao Tian and let him be the boss. To be perfectly honest, most of the supplies in the area had already been occupied and hoarded by others. It was becoming increasingly difficult for Xiao Tian to continue his search for resources alone. With Li Qingshan's help, things might indeed be easier, but we must remember they were already enemies. And in this world, such a rivalry is a fight to the death. There is no turning back once the arrow has been fired. Since they were already on opposite sides, Xiao Tian decided there was no need for further words. Wishing him a simple, good luck, Xiao Tian hung up the phone without a second thought. On the other end of the line, Li Qingshan stood dazed for a moment, as if he could vaguely see his fate approaching. Her great disaster was about to return to her, looming like a shadow. The negotiation had failed, and now, there was only one option left, to flee. She had to run and find a relatively safe place to hide from the coming storm. If she could travel through time, she would surely go back and slap herself for being so foolish. Of all the people she shouldn't have provoked, why did she have to target this group of demons? This had become a fight to the death, and unfortunately, there is no medicine for regret in this world. Now, her only goal was survival. Living just one more day was a victory in itself. After packing some simple supplies, she prepared to make her move. Li Qingshan put on a mask and headed downstairs, carrying several large and small packages. Just at that moment, we see three figures suddenly walking toward her in unison. The young man in the lead asked if she was Li Qingshan, to which she quickly lied, saying she wasn't. Claiming they had the wrong person, Li Qinshan was startled but refused to admit her true identity. She slightly adjusted her mask, trying to slip past them and go her own way. However, the three strangers stood their ground, effectively blocking Li Qinshan's path. One of them suddenly manifested the features of a dog and pointed to his nose with a grin. He explained that he had awakened the heightened olfactory abilities of a hunting dog. He had already locked onto her scent. Even plastic surgery couldn't fool his nose, let alone a mask. He confirmed she was indeed Li Qinshan, noting that after the live broadcast of Xiong Tao's annihilation, things had changed. No accidents occurred that night, and early the next morning, even before the sun had risen, 3 people appeared at the villa carrying a suitcase, signaling the start of a new chapter. The 3 individuals opened the suitcase, revealing the head of Li Qinshan, her expression frozen in a final, haunting moment. It was a rather intense sight, filled with resentment, deep regret, and a lingering sense of rage. Yenryu took only a single glance before her stomach began to churn violently, leaving her on the verge of vomiting. As for Xiao Tian, he remained perfectly serene, the only one whose composure didn't waver in the slightest. Before his rebirth, he had witnessed scenes far more horrific, filled with truly malevolent spirits. He had even shared meals in the middle of literal seas of corpses, a grim reality of his past life. By now, he was essentially immune to the macabre sights of death. Without wasting any time on small talk, Xiao Tian simply handed the 3 men a crate of supplies in exchange for the head. Seeing how generous Xiao Tian was being, the 3 of them were understandably quite thrilled with the trade. They took their supplies and turned to leave, but at that moment, the delicate-looking girl in their group suddenly stopped. She paused, looking back at him with a very specific proposal in mind. She told him, "Brother Xiao Tian, I can warm your bed for you." She asked if he could take her in, pleading to stay by his side and serve him however he needed. She claimed she didn't need anything in return, just 3 meals a day would be enough. Imagine the shock of Xiao Wan, the young man standing right there in the group. His eyes nearly popped out of his head as he realized he'd been chasing her for 3 years without even holding her hand. To him, she had always been the object of his platonic devotion, a pure goddess beyond his reach. And yet here she was, offering herself up for the simple price of 3 daily meals. She was willing to sell herself just to warm someone else's bed, which was a bitter pill for him to swallow. He couldn't help but wonder where the justice or the law had gone in this chaotic new world. While such activities are accepted with enthusiasm, they are essentially killing off any sense of dignity until it's extinct. The young man, Xiao Wan, showed his pain clearly, clenching his fists in a fit of silent fury. The girl, Zhang Wo, reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder as he stood there trembling. Seeing this, she thanked him for taking care of her all this time, but claimed she simply wasn't good enough for him yet. She promised that once she became a better version of herself, she would definitely come back to find him. Then, with a straight face, she asked if he would be willing to wait for her. As for Xiaowan, he eagerly agreed, nodding frantically as he looked at Zhang Wo. He actually smiled, showing his teeth in a display of tragic, misguided hope. After that, she turned her attention back to our protagonist, calling out to him as Brother Xiao Tian. Xiao Tian was utterly dumbfounded, a manipulator and a sycophant, truly a match made in heaven. Not to mention that, with his current level of power, there wasn't a woman in this world he couldn't find. Even Yen Ruyu, standing right beside him, surpassed Zhang Wo in figure, looks, and temperament in every possible way. With a dark expression, Xiao Tian uttered a single, final word, "Get out." Xiao Wan turned away immediately, looking at Zhang Wo with what he thought was profound affection. He told her he was back, and that he had become even better than he was before. The two of them, Xiao Wan and the girl, actually embraced and wept with joy, which was a bit much, honestly. Xiao Tian sent the group on their way, and we see everyone finally returning to the safety of the villa. Meanwhile, Yenruyu wore a worried expression as she thought of her elderly father. She remembered the instructions he had given her, which brought on a sudden, sharp sense of crisis. Xiao Tian is excellent, his strength is undeniable, and, more importantly, he is quite handsome, isn't he? A man like that, in this era of dark chaos, is essentially a piece of shining gold. Besides, the existing social order has completely collapsed. Monogamy is now a thing of the past, provided Xiao Tian wants it to be, of course. Having many wives and concubines is really just a matter of time for someone like him. Deep down, she knew she had to act as soon as possible. She needed to consummate the marriage, but to the outside world, she had always been the school's cold, untouchable flower. Even with her icy demeanor, she never lacked for suitors. Now, the thought of confessing to Xiao Tian, and even actively pursuing the marriage, left her completely clueless. Just as Yen Ruyu was lost in her thoughts, several more cars arrived outside the villa. A few figures stepped out of the vehicles and began hauling out several heavy burlap sacks. Inside, we see they contained a whole stack of mysterious golden boxes. Xiao Tian, meanwhile, was already watching them through the villa's external surveillance. He saw the situation outside, opened the door, and walked straight out to meet them. Upon seeing Xiao Tian, these men suddenly became remarkably well-behaved. After all, the memory of Xiao Tian killing Xiong Tao and the others was still fresh. It remained vivid in their minds that this man is absolutely ruthless, which, to be honest, was an understatement. They quickly told him not to misunderstand, claiming they had no bad intentions whatsoever. They had only come to trade resources for the golden boxes hidden in those burlap sacks. There were more than 10 in total, and they suggested he take a look for himself. Xiao Tian had some resources brought out, made the trade, and then carried the sacks of golden boxes back into the villa. After returning to the villa, Xiao Tian gave Yen Ruyu and her father one golden box each to begin their absorption. It wasn't that Xiao Tian was being stingy. We must remember that most of the resources in the villa were scavenged by him alone. Since he was now using those resources to trade for the golden boxes, the ownership of these treasures naturally belonged to him. Besides, for ordinary low-level warriors, absorbing the power within these golden boxes consumes a significant amount of energy. A single golden chest is more than enough to keep 2 people occupied with the absorption process for a very long time. They had also learned the true nature of these chests from Xiao Tian, understanding exactly what they were dealing with. And so, they began the process without a moment's hesitation. The 2 of them took their respective golden chests and began to draw the energy directly into their palms. The golden chests flickered with a faint light, and as the 2 continued to absorb the power, that glow gradually began to dim. However, the rate at which the light faded was incredibly slow, a testament to the sheer amount of energy contained within. Xiao Tian, by contrast, took a golden chest in his palm, and a surge of air appeared, swallowing the energy directly. A sharp, rhythmic crunching sound echoed through the villa's lobby as he processed the power. In the blink of an eye, the golden chest was completely drained and absorbed by Xiao Tian, leaving nothing behind. We see his status update. Name, Xiao Tian. Level 4. His bloodline level has reached 5, with a genetic sequence number known as Trinity. He has inherited the traits of limb regeneration, the ability to extend a pair of wings, and the power to release lightning feathers. He can now strike down his enemies and absorb blood from the air to further strengthen himself. Xiao Tian successfully reached level 4, but as he climbs higher, the number of golden chests required only increases. He estimated that the remaining chests wouldn't even be enough to reach level 5, which, as it turned out, was exactly the case. Even after absorbing every single one of them, he found himself still needing more of that golden power. Upon seeing that Xiao Tian had already finished absorbing the 2 golden chests from the snakeskin people, the 2 women were left utterly speechless. Everyone was stunned. They were all warriors, yet they couldn't help but wonder why the gap between them was so vast. It wasn't just the massive difference in raw strength, which was impressive enough, but even his speed in absorbing the golden chests was beyond belief. To be perfectly honest, he was less like a man and more like a monster at this point. He urged them to accelerate their absorption, as their main focus during this time would be strictly on raising their levels. Not long after, we learned that the impact of the lasers would cause the plants on Blue Star to change. The insects would also undergo large-scale mutations, becoming far more numerous than they were now. They would become much more dangerous, as the animals typically seen in large cities were essentially just domesticated beasts compared to what was coming. Mutant beasts would soon be everywhere, and the sense of danger would only grow more intense. This was the primary reason why Xiao Tian was so intent on using his supplies. He wanted to trade them for golden boxes because, while supplies are important, we must remember that in times of chaos, priorities shift. It is far more vital to improve one's strength as much as possible to survive what lies ahead. Yen Ruyu and the woman nodded vigorously, returning their focus to absorbing the energy from the golden boxes. The rest of the day passed relatively quietly, with people occasionally arriving at the villa carrying golden chests. They came to exchange their treasures for resources, and Xiao Tian, ever the pragmatist, didn't turn a single person away. After all, he had accumulated more than enough supplies to handle the demand. Even if every single person from the surrounding forces showed up at his doorstep, looking to trade their golden boxes for food and water, he could easily afford it. By the end of the day, Xiao Tian had traded for hundreds of boxes, leaving a small portion for the women while absorbing the vast majority himself. And so, through this relentless process, Xiao Tian's strength successfully reached level 9. Not long after, the dark chaos officially erupted, changing the world forever. He noted that his level had reached level 9, a speed of improvement that was already crushing most people. Feeling the surge of power within his body, Xiao Tian murmured quietly to himself. However, even with this massive physical upgrade, he couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of curiosity. To be honest, he was still far more concerned about the progress of his swallowing gene. He wondered when the next opportunity to evolve that specific gene would finally present itself. Meanwhile, Yen Ruyu and the other woman finished absorbing their golden boxes, and their levels rose accordingly. While our 3 protagonists were busy inside, the internet outside was reaching a boiling point. Word had spread that golden boxes could actually be traded for vital supplies at Xiao Tian's location. Because of Xiao Tian, the survivors were suddenly filled with a frantic, desperate energy. In the Daeru region, countless warriors began to mobilize, heading out to hunt mutant beasts one after another. They spared no effort in tracking down these creatures, determined to kill them for their treasures. And so, a massive hunt initiated by Xiao Tian began, quite unexpectedly, to take over the region. Even animals that had barely begun to mutate were found and slaughtered by the crazed crowds. Some people, seeking maximum efficiency, even began rounding up normal animals, simply waiting for them to turn. They were essentially farming the mutation at its source, a clever, if somewhat ruthless, strategy. On this day, the mutant beasts of Devoured were, quite frankly, completely caught off guard. Before they could even experience this new world, they were hunted down by mobs as fierce as wolves. At this current stage, the Devoured region had clearly transformed into something quite unique. It became the safest city on Blue Star, simply because nearly every mutant beast had already been exterminated. Night falls silently, and Xiao Tian returns to his room early to get some much-needed rest. Just as he is drifting between sleep and wakefulness, he hears a light footstep outside his door. Immediately after, the closed door opens softly with a faint, lingering creak. A slender figure, dressed only in a light shirt, slips carefully through the crack of the door. One spark of light is enough to see her, though she seems to be whispering for him to submit. Xiao Tian, lying there in bed, was not actually completely asleep. He nearly jumps out of his skin, thinking for a moment that a thief has broken into the villa, or perhaps these are enemies coming for him. Though, the villa's defense level is remarkably high. With the comprehensive King Kong coverage, not even a wartime consul could break in, let alone a petty thief. As for actual enemies, he tells himself that is even more impossible, because anyone daring enough to become his enemy would usually be sent to meet their end quite quickly. Since it isn't a thief or an enemy, we have to wonder who would be prowling around at midnight. He considers staying still in his own room, and soon enough, Xiao Tian has his answer. It is Yin Ruyu, her slender figure tiptoeing quietly toward the edge of the bed. Xiao Tian could already catch the faint, delicate scent of her perfume drifting through the air. In this moment, Yin Ruyu was no longer the distant, untouchable school beauty we once knew. In the darkness, her face flushed deep red. She comes to a stop right in front of the bed. She constantly adjusts her breathing, trying to encourage herself, yet she feels her heart racing wildly. It felt as though it might jump right out of her throat. After all, she was a wealthy young lady sneaking into a man's bed. This was something she had never done in reality, nor even seen on television, a bold move, to say the least. She asks herself why she is doing this, wondering if it is simply because she wants to cling to Xiao Tian's strength. Has she really chosen to sell her own body just to survive in this cruel apocalypse? After confirming that Xiao Tian was still sound asleep, Yin Ruyu let out a long, quiet sigh of relief. But as she reached the final step, she hesitated, which, to be honest, was only natural. If she actually went through with this, she wondered what the difference was between her and Su Wan. She told herself there was still a difference, as the other woman was just an ordinary person, while she, on the other hand, was the school beauty. No, she simply needed to stay close to Xiao Tian. But after spending this time together, she realized she truly had developed genuine feelings for him. Besides, we must remember that he was the one who saved her entire family. If he hadn't taken that electric eel away, things might have turned out exactly as he warned. Under the influence of the aurora, those electric eels were destined to mutate into something far more dangerous. She and her father would have died, so she tells herself she is merely repaying his kindness with gratitude. Deep down, she feels a profound debt because he saved everyone she loves. In ancient times, women who lacked the means to repay a great kindness had very few options. They would often pledge their very lives and bodies, and now, she felt she had nothing else to offer him. Offering herself seemed perfectly reasonable in her mind, and Yin Ruyu gave a small, determined nod. The light returned to her eyes as she made a bold decision that would have certainly shocked her ancestors. First, she carefully lifted the edge of the quilt next to Xiao Tian and slipped inside as quietly as possible. Xiao Tian, who was still lying there with his eyes closed pretending to sleep, was absolutely stunned. He couldn't help but wonder if Yin Ruyu was actually plotting something against him. He wondered if she intended to repay his kindness with enmity, though she certainly didn't seem prepared to die for it. And yet, to his surprise, the young woman proceeded to do something entirely unexpected. He finally spoke up, asking what she was doing just as Yin Ruyu had finished settling into the bed. She was still trying to calm her racing heart when Xiao Tian's voice suddenly broke the silence, startling her into a sharp cry. "Ah, Xiao Tian, you weren't actually asleep?" she stammered, her heart jumping into her throat. He replied that he had been nearly asleep, but her arrival had naturally woken him right up. He asked her directly why she had come to his bed in the middle of the night and what her intentions were. At that moment, Yin Ruyu's face turned a deep shade of crimson, visible even in the shadows. Her first instinct was to run away in shame, but she told herself that since she had come this far, she couldn't give up now. Before Xiao Tian could prepare himself, she suddenly turned over and pulled him into a firm embrace. Xiao Tian's eyes widened in shock, but before he could utter a single word, her soft, damp lips met his. They sealed his mouth, and that night, the cold apocalypse seemed to vanish behind a veil of spring warmth. Yin Ruyu never would have imagined that she would come so close to a different kind of death that evening. The following morning, we see Xiao Tian rising early, feeling remarkably refreshed and full of energy. He immediately sat down and consumed dozens of pounds of raw meat to fuel his formidable strength. As for Yin Ruyu, she didn't manage to drag herself out of bed until nearly noon. When she finally appeared, her way of walking was, to put it politely, quite unusual and stiff. The atmosphere in the living room was heavy with silence as she felt her elderly father's gaze fixed upon her. She felt so embarrassed that she desperately wished she could find a crack in the floor to crawl into and hide. Deep down, however, Yin Tianxun was absolutely ecstatic. He was no stubborn old man, and he knew exactly what this meant. Since his daughter was clearly interested in this young man, Xiao Tian, he felt it was best to consummate the marriage as soon as possible. "It's nothing, Boss Yan," Xiao Tian said suddenly, breaking the long silence that had lingered since the night before. He spoke up quite unexpectedly, addressing the older man as a friend and equal. "The affairs of you young people, I, an old man, cannot control them, nor do I wish to. You must decide for yourselves," he replied. Yin Tianxun simply waved his hand, smoothed out his beard, and spoke with a knowing smile. "Xiao Tian, by the way, many people have come by this morning to trade their supplies. All the golden boxes are right here. I've counted them in advance, and there are 13 in total." Yin Ryu pointed toward a briefcase sitting nearby as she spoke, her voice still a bit soft. Xiao Tian nodded, opened the case, and began to casually absorb the golden boxes, a process that took only a few minutes. Once all 13 golden boxes were completely absorbed, we see Xiao Tian's power level begin to shift. He had finally reached level 10, and though he had prepared himself mentally, Yin Tianxun couldn't hide the shock in his heart. The old man had spent the entire night awake and had only managed to absorb a single golden box himself. And even after all that effort, his own power had barely managed to reach level 3. Yet here was Xiao Tian, completing the absorption of 13 boxes in the time it takes to have a quick conversation. To be perfectly honest, a speed like that is nothing short of terrifying. He told himself it was a blessing that Xiao Tian wasn't an enemy. Otherwise, the situation would be utterly hopeless. At that same moment, a look of genuine surprise flickered across Xiao Tian's own face. Because just as he hit level 10, a new system notification suddenly materialized before his eyes. Congratulations were in order. His speed had reached level 10, granting him a rare opportunity to devour. And so, with his speed officially at level 10, a new chapter of his strength was about to begin. The lineage function had finally been unlocked, meaning his speed could now devour mutated plants, animals, and even insects. Curious about his progress, Xiao Tian opened his interface bar to check his current status. There it was, level 10, and his lineage level had reached level 10 as well. His genetic sequence number was 9766, a trinity that inherited the remarkable characteristics of limb regeneration. It allowed him to extend a pair of wings, release lightning feathers to slice through enemies, and absorb blood from the air to grow stronger. While his own lineage level was also at 10, Xiao Tian wasn't entirely sure yet what the full function of this level would be. But in the grand scheme of things, none of that mattered. He had gained another chance to devour, and this time, the options were vast. With mutated plants, animals, and insects now on the menu, he knew he had to find the perfect opportunity. He needed to devour a new target because, if his calculations were correct, the second realm was also about to open. Hidden deep within that second realm was a legendary set of resurrection equipment. This gear was incredibly formidable, essentially the equivalent of having a second life. However, finding it would be quite a challenge. In his previous life, it had been discovered by the celestial master panda AI of Longa Mountain. Relying on that very equipment, his former rival eventually became one of the top experts in the dragon realm. That man was a master of divination and various other spells, even though he never became a retail warrior. Even so, he possessed a level of combat effectiveness that was nothing to sneeze at. The real key was his art of divination, which allowed him to sniff out all sorts of hidden treasures. So, Xiao Tian now had two temporary goals: find a new target to devour and complete the process. And secondly, he had to find Panda AI and convince the man to follow him. He needed to enter the second area of vengeance, but just then, Yin Tianxun suddenly remembered something important. He pulled out an envelope and handed it over, explaining that a man had come to the villa that morning specifically to deliver this letter. The messenger hadn't said anything specific. Xiao Tian simply nodded, opened the envelope, and began to read. The content was blunt and to the point. "Xiao Tian, this is Yuan. I demand your unconditional submission. Otherwise, I will launch a retaliation against you. The Great Scholars Hall only needs one Supreme Lord." To be honest, the man didn't lack confidence. Looking at the letter, the boss thought to himself that it seemed this Yuan was eager for an early grave. Xiao Tian felt that the name sounded familiar, as if it were a ghost from a life he had already lived. After thinking it over carefully, a memory finally clicked into place. Before his rebirth, Yuan had also been a minor boss in the Great Scholars Hall, much like Chao Menglong. After the chaos began, he had started recruiting people and developing his own private forces. But unlike Chao Menglong, Yuan's style was far more ruthless, and his vision was focused much further ahead. If he remembered correctly, in the original timeline, Chao Menglong would eventually be destroyed by Yuan. As the dark chaos advanced, the environment became harsher and the resources of the Great Scholar's Hall grew limited. To seize all resources for himself, Yuan gathered all the retail warriors under his command. He then launched a systematic cleaning operation against any other competing forces. He hadn't expected that in this new life, he would be the one targeted by such an opponent so soon. But on second thought, it made sense. His actions lately had been quite flashy, to say the least. By holding the majority of the resources, he was inevitably squeezing the survival space of everyone else. For Yuan to attack him was, in reality, only a matter of time. Xiao Tian just hadn't expected the opponent's opening move to be quite so simple and brutal and fast. Had he still been an ordinary person, as he was before his rebirth, this might have been a problem. If he were still that same man, being targeted by someone like Yuan would have surely kept him awake all night. But things are different now. With the system at his side, he simply needs to take action. The fact that this man dared to threaten him in writing was, in his eyes, already a death sentence. He knew he had to find a way to eliminate this hidden threat once and for all. We see him standing there, fully aware that his opponent is a dangerous enemy who poses a real risk. To act with indifference and wait for the opponent to strike first before resolving the matter? That would be pure stupidity, and Xiao Tian was certainly not that kind of man. Nearby, Yen Rushun and Yen Tianxin also caught a glimpse of the letter's contents. For a brief moment, their expressions turned quite grim. After all, not much time had passed since the incidents with Chao Menglong and Xian Tao. And yet, unexpectedly, this new threat named Yuan had already emerged. To be honest, the two of them felt a bit overwhelmed by the constant cycle of conflict. But they weren't overly worried, as the villa was now protected by King Kong, deterring even minor warriors. A direct attack would be difficult, especially with a terrifying presence like Xiao Tian standing guard. Ordinary people simply didn't have the standing to be so presumptuous around him. Yen Tianxin noted that since the other party dared to send a blood threat, they must have some confidence. He suggested they should think the matter over carefully before making their next move. Xiao Tian didn't offer a verbal reply. Instead, he noticed a phone number written on the back of the envelope. Without a moment's hesitation, he pulled out his mobile phone, entered the digits, and dialed. After a few seconds, the call connected, and a deep, masculine voice echoed from the other end. Hee, it seems you've already read the contents of the envelope. Yuan let out a couple of dark, somber chuckles over the line. He was just about to launch into a long-winded speech, but Xiao Tian cut him off. "Where is your house?" he asked, his tone flat and direct. Yuan was left feeling a bit confused, as this wasn't at all what he had expected. He had originally assumed the other party would call to admit their mistake and surrender. But the very first question he received was simply the location of his home. What could this possibly mean? What was he planning to do? Beside him, Chen Jin asked what he meant and what he intended to do. Yuan asked slowly, though Xiao Tian replied that he didn't really want to do anything. "You're a scholar and a local too, aren't you?" Xiao Tian asked with total indifference, and though Yuan didn't understand, he still answered, "Yes, that's right. I am also a scholar and a local. Perhaps we were even classmates back in kindergarten," Xiao Tian remarked. "It has been so many years since graduation, after all. And yet, we still managed to cross paths in this way. I have some local products here. Just give me a contact address. I'll find some time to mail them over to you." To be honest, this didn't feel right. 9 times out of 10, such offers are a trap. It didn't sound good. Although he didn't know why Xiao Tian was asking for his address, Yuan's intuition warned him. It's definitely nothing good, Yuan thought, before demanding that Xiao Tian hand over every single resource he possessed. And then, he continued, "Make sure your people submit to me." He promised to tell him everything he wanted to know, but Xiao Tian simply lost interest and hung up the phone. It seemed that this Yuan wasn't quite as careless as Chao Menglong had been. Our protagonist had fallen completely into the trap. He had already reached level 10 and merged 3 genetic sequences. With such power, there were very few people in all of Diru who could even hope to stand against him. Had Yuan given him a specific address, Xiao Tian would have gone there directly to eliminate the entire family. It was a bit of a shame, really, that the other party didn't take the bait. Turning to Boss Yen, he gave instructions for the people in the villa to avoid going out and to stay inside for now. Xiao Tian reflected that, if he remembered correctly, Yuan had already recruited many people and had several warriors under his command. Fortunately, the villa's defenses were incredibly high. Not even a Tao bear could break through them with its bare hands. While staying inside the villa could be difficult, it remained, without a doubt, the safest option. Yen Tianxin nodded in agreement, having no objections to this plan whatsoever. After giving his instructions, Xiao Tian took out his mobile phone and began recording a video. He posted it online immediately, and we see that the content of the video was remarkably simple. Anyone who could bring him Yuan's head could come to the villa and exchange it for 5 large crates of resources. Since the other party refused to show himself, Xiao Tian couldn't exactly go out and hunt him down actively. After all, Diru is a vast place, far too large for a simple search. Looking for one specific person would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Besides, he had far too many things on his mind and simply didn't have the time to waste. As the saying goes, if you have resources in hand, anyone is willing to work for you like an ox or a horse. Once the video was posted, it instantly blew up across the entire Diru internet circle. People were stunned. After all, not much time had passed since the incident with Li Qinshan. Everyone was asking who this Yuan was, and how he could have possibly offended the great god Shao. His head was now worth 5 large crates of resources, a staggering fortune in these times. The winner could even specify which resources they wanted, so it really didn't matter who this Yuan was anymore. Users began posting that they were heading out immediately, asking if there were any skilled rogue warriors available for tracking. They urged others to leave their contact information so they could cooperate and catch this wave of profit together. We see the comment section beneath the video absolutely exploding with activity. In a matter of mere minutes, the news had even reached the home of HEW. Shao Tian had live-streamed his power during the last confrontation, leaving a lasting impression. After he killed the Xian Tao xenomorph, countless people had begun calling him the god of death in private. One would think that after such a display, no one in all of Diru would ever dare to cross him again. And yet, only a few days have passed, and someone else has already stepped forward to seek their own demise. A single head for 5 large crates of supplies was an offer no one could ignore. We must remember that the vast majority of supplies in Diru are now controlled by the wealthiest men. Most ordinary people are still going hungry, which makes this bounty even more tempting. The news spread rapidly across the region, moving through the population like a plague. Like wolves catching the scent of fresh blood, the people of Diru went a little mad for a while. Soon, many hunters and warriors were seen prowling the streets in groups of 3 and 5, searching for their prize. They were all searching for Yuan's whereabouts, while on the other end of the line, Shao Tian simply hung up the phone. Yuan, for his part, was left feeling a bit bewildered. After all, he hadn't called just to surrender himself. He had simply been asking for Shao Tian's specific location. He wondered what tricks the man was playing, but it didn't take long for him to understand. Suddenly, a voice cried out that something big had happened just outside the abandoned warehouse. A man wearing denim jeans came running inside, his face twisted in a look of pure panic. Yuan snapped at him, asking why he was shouting, reminding him they were hunters and warriors now, not common folk. He lectured him that when something important happens, one must maintain their calm and carry an air of importance. Yuan looked the man over, clearly annoyed by the lack of composure, which, to be honest, was a bit much. The man swallowed hard, and slowly, his frantic mood began to settle down. Seeing this, Yuan asked him calmly to speak up and tell him what was going on. He wanted to know exactly what had happened to make the man so frightened. The man replied that, in his opinion, the boss was being far too calm for his own good. Upon hearing those words, Yuan found himself momentarily stunned. Seeing Yuan's confused expression, the man didn't bother explaining. He simply pulled out his phone and played a video. After watching the footage, Yuan fell into a heavy, stunned silence. A moment later, a roar filled with absolute fury erupted from his throat. The shout echoed through the abandoned warehouse as he cursed Shao Tian and his entire lineage. Meanwhile, Shao Tian had brought out Enro, knowing the second dungeon was about to appear. To secure that set of resurrection-level equipment inside, he knew he had to get his hands on Panda AI as soon as possible. His goal was to recruit this celestial master from Longwu Mountain. This time, he intended to make the man one of his own followers. We see them get out of the car and immediately begin to fight. The celestial master is struck with incredible force. After the two of them left the villa, they climbed into a red Ferrari and set off toward Longwu Mountain. After all, they weren't exactly going shopping this time around. A luxury car wasn't strictly appropriate, but then again, neither was driving a massive truck again. With one hand on the leather steering wheel, Shao Tian let out a quiet sigh to himself. In the past, he wouldn't have even dared to dream of driving such a luxurious vehicle. Unexpectedly, that dream had become a reality. Though in this era of dark chaos, luxury cars are worth almost nothing. One couldn't even trade a car like this for a simple bowl of instant noodles. As they traveled, Enro asked about the true purpose of this particular trip. Since she was considered one of his inner circle, Shao Tian saw no reason to hide the truth. He told her about the divination ability and the resurrection equipment hidden inside the second dungeon. When she heard that the second dungeon actually contained gear with the power of resurrection, Enro was utterly stunned, wondering if such a legendary armor could truly exist. It seemed impossible for such gear to appear in reality, but then she remembered that plants and insects were already turning into monsters. Her shock began to fade as she realized the world had changed. She asked if this equipment could truly bring someone back to life. Enro turned her head to look at Shao Tian, her eyes filled with genuine curiosity. Shao Tian nodded in confirmation, and after Enro reflected for a moment, she suddenly spoke up. She asked if a person could truly be resurrected even if they were crushed into a pulp while wearing this gear. Shao Tian fell into a thoughtful silence at the weight of that question. To be honest, he hadn't actually considered this specific problem before his rebirth. He only recalled seeing online that Panda AI had once been cornered in a brutal siege and relied on the gear's resurrection property. He had fought his way out, but as for whether the resurrection had specific restrictions, that remained unclear for now. After all, we are talking about equipment from a forbidden zone. In such a place, things simply cannot be judged by ordinary common sense. After thinking it over for a long time, Xiao Tian finally offered what he felt was a reasonable explanation. Yin Ruyu nodded, but then a new doubt arose. What would happen if Panda AI refused to cooperate? Then we'll just beat him until he's willing to cooperate, he replied. Xiao Tian spoke almost without thinking, as if this were the most obvious truth in the world. In this new world, there is no legal protection. The fist has become the only law that matters. If the other party isn't willing to follow you, then you simply beat them into submission. And if they insist on standing against you, then they cannot be allowed to remain your enemy. In that case, you use them, and then you silence them forever, which is a rather grim way to do business. This is the cold confidence that comes from possessing overwhelming strength. Of course, this was all based on the knowledge Xiao Tian had of Panda AI before his rebirth. He suspected the man might not accept a request for cooperation, as the great scholar was currently a top-tier mutated beast. We see that their journey remained peaceful, a rare occurrence since most things had nearly gone extinct. With no other vehicles in sight, they drove without obstacles for 2.5 hours. Our two travelers finally arrived at Longwu Mountain without any major setbacks. They reached their destination, a place surrounded by mountains and rivers, boasting a truly beautiful landscape. The mountain mist hadn't dissipated yet, which added a certain hazy beauty to the entire scene. To be honest, however, Xiao Tian was in no mood to stop and admire the mountain scenery. He simply parked the car directly in front of the gates of the Taoist temple. Just as the two of them were stepping out of the vehicle, the temple doors slowly creaked open. A stout man wearing a Taoist robe emerged, rubbing his sleepy eyes and yawning quite loudly. When he spotted Xiao Tian and his companion standing outside the gate, he froze in complete shock. He couldn't believe it, two living people. By now, the failure of the world against the dark chaos was public knowledge. Even though Panda AI had lived secluded on Longwu Mountain for many years, he wasn't entirely cut off. He still checked his phone occasionally, so he knew a fair bit about the current state of the world. Top-tier mutated beasts were swarming everywhere, and spirit beast warriors were being born in the chaos. The entire country of Great Scholar had already descended into absolute madness and disorder. Many people were now resorting to murdering those around them just to secure a few basic supplies. So, imagine his surprise when someone actually drove all the way up to Longwu Mountain at a time like this. He wondered if they had actually come just to burn incense and offer up a few prayers. He quickly decided that his Taoist temple would no longer be accepting standard donations from monks. From now on, they would only be accepting raw materials as a form of payment. Visitors could use various supplies to trade for incense, which was a practical adjustment for the times. Food, of course, was the preferred currency. Panda AI cleared his throat and prepared to address them. However, before the monk could even finish speaking, Xiao Tian stepped forward, his black wings unfurling behind him as that familiar electric eel had emerged. He entered his beastly state immediately. No warnings, no pleasantries, just pure power. Then, his figure became a blur as he threw a heavy punch straight toward Panda AI's face. Damn, Panda AI cried out, his mind reeling as he found himself completely caught off guard. He wondered where this madman had come from, looking for trouble at the very first hour of the morning. To be honest, it's quite rude to attack someone the very second you lay eyes on them. How much hatred or how many grievances could this stranger possibly have? But this was Longwu Mountain, after all. As a 98th generation master, Panda AI was no fool, and his bulky body reacted to the threat instantly. He became surprisingly agile, leaping backward with speed, but even after that impressive jump, and before he could even steady himself, he suddenly slipped and lost his balance entirely. He pitched forward, his head moving directly into the path of Xiao Tian's incoming fist. Crap, he shouted, his eyes turning red with frustration after the impact. He had essentially used his head to block the punch, and his right eye instantly became a literal panda eye, bruised and dark. With a pained cry, Panda AI scrambled to put some distance between them, stumbling back several steps. Rubbing his sore eye, Panda AI stood there, feeling more than a little dazed by the turn of events. Xiao Tian knew that this man was the celestial master of Longwu Mountain and likely had his own pride, which might lead him to refuse a request. So, he had planned to make the first move, striking until the opponent was convinced by a display of overwhelming strength. He just hadn't expected the monk to ignore the rules of combat and use his own head to catch a fist. Indeed, a celestial master is a celestial master, even in the most absurd moments. It seems ordinary people like us simply cannot understand a routine as unique as this one. And most importantly, we must remember that even an elite warrior would struggle to withstand a direct punch from him. Yet, after taking that blow directly to the head, the opponent seemed perfectly fine, aside from a rather nasty black eye. It was clear this big guy was no simpleton. He had the potential to become one of the top experts in the dragon realm. Xiao Tian continued his assault, wasting no time on words as he moved his limbs, ready to strike once more. Just at that critical moment, Panda AI, who had been rubbing his eyes, suddenly turned pale with realization. And then, his knees buckled as he dropped directly to the ground, kneeling right there in front of Xiao Tian. "Have mercy, hero. I know I was wrong. I'll give you whatever you want. Just please stop hitting me." Watching Panda AI suddenly beg for clemency, Xiao Tian blinked, feeling more than a little confused by the display. Wasn't this man supposed to be a celestial master of Longwu Mountain and a future legend of the Dragon Realm? And yet, here he was, kneeling on the ground and pleading for his life. We see a similar look of bewilderment reflected in Yan Ruyu's large, bright eyes as she watched the scene. To be honest, this stout fellow didn't look anything like the formidable expert they had expected. She wondered if he truly knew any divination arts at all, but while they were both dazed, Panda AI's eyes darted around. In an instant, he scrambled away, waddling like a duck as he bolted back toward the Taoist temple. Crap, he thought, convinced that this lunatic was simply there to bully a defenseless master. While the celestial masters of Dragon Tiger Mountain do practice cultivation to strengthen their bodies, those methods are quite limited. They certainly couldn't compare to the overwhelming power provided by the retail warrior's unique system. You see, the masters of this mountain are actually far more skilled in the mystical arts of Fulu talismans. But since he had only just woken up, he was wearing nothing but a thin, simple robe. He didn't have a single talisman on him, but he vowed that once he found them, he'd make this intruder regret everything. If he failed to do so, he told himself, he wouldn't be worthy of the title of Celestial Master of Dragon Tiger Mountain. Suddenly, Panda AI transformed into a surprisingly agile stout man and bolted toward the main hall of Daowan. He quickly pulled a small box from a drawer and flung it open. Inside, Panda AI found exactly what he was looking for, a thick stack of Fulu talismans from the Dragon Tiger Mountain. These were various talismans left behind by the celestial masters of every preceding generation. They were capable of summoning bolts of lightning and igniting fierce, magical flames. One could say they were the ultimate weapons for slaying demons and exorcising restless spirits. But since Panda AI had arrived at Dragon Tiger Mountain, he hadn't actually seen a single demon. Consequently, these powerful talismans had remained almost entirely unused until now. However, he was certain that using them would be more than enough to deal with our retail warrior. At that very moment, we see Xiao Tian rushing into the hall as well. "Kid, you're finished," the master declared, "and I mean it." He boasted that these were advanced talismans left by the legendary masters of Dragon Tiger Mountain throughout the ages. Even for a retail warrior, this was simply not a place where one could run wild without consequences. He threatened that in just a moment, he would give him such a beating that he'd be crying out for his mother. After securing the Fulu, Panda AI felt his confidence return almost instantly. He wiped the sweat from his brow and allowed himself a smug, complacent smile. However, in the very next second, he found he could no longer laugh. He watched as Xiao Tian stared at the stack of talismans, and a pin suddenly shot out from the warrior's back. It flew with precision, piercing directly through the entire stack of sacred Fulu. These were the advanced treasures left behind by the celestial masters of every preceding generation. Immediately afterward, a terrifying current of electricity surged forth from the pin. And just like that, the Fulu talismans began to heat up gradually until they ignited. They were reduced to a mere pile of ashes within a raging, magical fire. Panda AI stared at his hand, watching the ashes of the Fulu float away in the wind with his mouth wide open. He was completely stupefied. The confidence that had just surged within him vanished along with those scattered ashes. He desperately asked the warrior if he would believe him if he said the whole thing had just been a joke. His eyes, as we can see, were filled with nothing but pure despair. Drenched in sweat, Panda AI's Taoist robes were now clinging tightly to his trembling body. He looked extremely haggard, yet Xiao Tian said absolutely nothing in response. He simply swung his fists without stopping, knowing he had to secure the resurrection equipment from the second territory. He felt he had to defeat him until he was truly convinced, and we won't even mention the cruelty of it all. In this post-apocalyptic world, one must prioritize oneself to survive, which is a harsh truth indeed. As for the supposed bravery of Panda AI while he was being pummeled, it wasn't something Xiao Tian needed to consider. "Stop, I beg you, don't hit me anymore, please don't hit me anymore," he cried out. He told him he had already surrendered, wondering why the warrior was still so enthusiastic about the beating. He reminded him that he was a celestial master, after all, though that didn't seem to help much. He cursed, desperately asking where on earth he could have possibly offended him so deeply. Did he really drive all the way to Longwu Mountain first thing in the morning just to beat him up? Was it truly necessary? He pleaded that he was wrong, truly knowing now just how wrong he had been. "Ow, what on earth are you doing?" he cried out as one punch followed another, then a third, a fourth, and a fifth. Panda AI was being pummeled, completely unable to defend himself against the onslaught. Our venerable celestial master, now weak and utterly defenseless, could do nothing but cover his head and curl into a corner. The entire process lasted for a full half-hour, which, to be honest, is a very long time to be a punching bag. Panda AI could no longer even scream. His throat was hoarse, his body went numb, and the pain gradually faded into a dull ache. His face, already quite round, was now swollen like a pig's head by the time Xiao Tian finally decided to stop. We see him curl up even tighter, quietly wiping away small, bitter tears in the silence that followed. Deep down, he desperately wanted to know just how he had managed to provoke this malevolent star. He had been brutally beaten first thing in the morning, practically the moment he had opened his eyes. What on earth had he done? Meanwhile, Yenryu had been watching the entire time and seeing Panda AI in this state. In this truly pitiful situation, she couldn't help but feel a little bit moved by compassion. Xiaotian, aren't we perhaps going a bit too far? She asked, her voice trailing off. Yenryu bit her lip nervously and posed the question with extreme caution. Too far. Xiaotian felt he had been perfectly reasonable. Though he'd spent 30 minutes striking him, he had carefully controlled his strength to avoid killing him. We won't leave him with any permanent disabilities, he noted, though Yenryu felt their approach to cooperation was a bit dishonest. Yenryu reminded him softly that even if this fat fellow didn't seem particularly reliable, cornering him and beating him for half an hour immediately upon meeting was a rather intense introduction. It was, in her eyes, truly too cruel, and as the two of them chatted, Panda AI was listening to every word. He was left completely stupefied, his pupils shrinking in shock as his voice rose 8 octaves in disbelief. Are you kidding me? You came here to cooperate with me? At this moment, Panda AI felt like weeping from the sheer injustice of it all. Was this really the attitude of someone seeking cooperation? Without saying a single word, Xiaotian had entered a state of pure brutality and beaten him for a full half hour. During that half hour, the poor fellow had recalled every bad deed he'd ever committed, convinced he was being punished for violating celestial laws. And now we see him learn that this ruthless person is actually here to work with him? Deep down, he was screaming. Who on earth could possibly think this was a proper way to start a partnership? Following Yenryu's gentle reminder, Xiaotian finally stopped the nonsense and got down to business. Looking down at Panda AI, he stated directly that the second territory was about to open. Inside, there were several sets of resurrection equipment waiting to be claimed. He needed Panda AI to use his powers of divination to help him locate this specific batch of gear. Of course, he wasn't expecting the man to work for free, which, given the beating, was the least he could do. As Xiaotian finished explaining the compensation, Yenryu understood immediately and brought several large crates from the Ferrari. Once the boxes were opened, we see they are filled to the brim with resources, canned goods, fine wine, and even cigarettes. Even an ordinary person with a massive appetite could live quite comfortably for several months on these supplies. Panda AI stared at the dazzling array of resources inside the crates, his eyes widening. If they had only told him this before the punching started, he would have agreed to the deal instantly. Since the start of the Dark Chaos, he had been hiding on Longwu Mountain, and his local resources were nearly gone. In fact, he had consumed almost everything himself, and what he lacked most in this world was food. Now that Xiaotian was offering several large crates in exchange, he had absolutely no reason to refuse. Xiaotian noted that these were his terms, and if Panda AI agreed to cooperate, it would naturally be for the best. And if he didn't agree, well, Panda AI didn't even want to imagine what would happen then. Xiaotian casually rubbed his knuckles, as if preparing for another round. He stated quite simply that if the man didn't agree, he would just keep hitting him until he did. Panda AI's mouth twitched in that moment, and for a second, the world seemed to go dark before his eyes. He was convinced this man had a serious overabundance of aggressive hormones. To him, Xiaotian was a total brute who resorted to violence at the slightest disagreement, far more threatening than any beast. He quickly promised to help, insisting that his divination arts could indeed locate hidden treasures. Terrified that Xiaotian might actually start swinging again, Panda AI accepted the deal without a second thought. As he rushed to agree, Xiaotian gave a satisfied nod. And so, things were progressing with unexpected smoothness. Deep down, Xiaotian felt that his strategy of intimidation followed by persuasion was still as effective as ever. After packing a few simple belongings, Panda AI followed the two of them back to the Ferrari. However, upon seeing that the car only had 2 seats, he fell into a stunned silence. He looked at the 2 seats and wondered, quite reasonably, where exactly he was supposed to sit. The Ferrari hummed with a faint warmth, leaving Xiaotian momentarily speechless. He realized that, in his haste to get there, he had completely ignored this logistical problem. But he told himself that as long as one is creative, there are always more solutions than problems. A few minutes later, we see the 3 of them finally setting off. Xiaotian took the driver's seat, while Yenryu sat comfortably in the passenger side. As for poor Panda AI, he was tied to the roof of the car with a look of utter misery on his face. As the Ferrari began to accelerate, the biting northwest wind rushed over him, nearly taking his breath away. Even his bangs were blown straight back by the force of the wind as they sped along. The poor man couldn't help but wonder what terrible sins he must have committed in a past life to deserve this. 2 hours later, our small group finally returned to the safety of the villa. As soon as the Ferrari came to a halt, Panda AI was untied, and his feet finally touched solid ground again. Feeling the earth steady beneath him, Panda AI looked pale, his spirit clearly shaken by the high-speed journey. Xiaotian suddenly mentioned that a second domain was expected to open very soon. He told the diviner to stay with them for the time being, noting that he only needed the man to recover his strength. All he had to do was wait for the domain to open, a prospect that left Panda AI nodding in a complete daze. After settling Panda AI's affairs, Xiao Tian led Yin Ruyu back inside the house. Once inside, Xiao Tian sat down with Yin Tianshun to give him a full report on the situation. He soon learned that while he and Yin Ruyu were away at Longwu Mountain, a large shipment of golden cores had arrived. To be honest, the total number of golden cores had now reached over 50. We see that during this time, Yin Tianshun had been busy absorbing the power of these cores. He had already successfully integrated 2 of them, which brought his own strength up to level 5. Xiao Tian gave a satisfied nod, showing that he understood the progress they had made. After handing out some yin to both Yin Tianshun and Yin Ruyu, he retired to his own room to begin his cultivation. It took Xiao Tian less than 10 minutes to completely absorb more than 30 units of yin. However, as is often the case, the higher one's level becomes, the more experience is required to advance. Even after consuming all that power, Xiao Tian's level only managed to crawl up to level 14. Time flew by as the sun dipped below the horizon, and soon enough, it was time for dinner. Panda AI joined Xiao Tian and the others for dinner, though Xiao Tian opted for raw meat instead. He nibbled on it somewhat unsteadily off to the side, while Panda AI sat down at the edge of the bed. Xiao Tian was absolutely tearing through the food on his plate, and we see that the rest of the meal on the table had been nearly wiped out. Yin Tianxin watched in a bit of a daze, wondering if this young man was the reincarnation of Zhu Beiji, his friend Xiao Tian's companion. It seemed he had brought back a bottomless pit, leading him to ask if the man was truly that hungry. After a long, heavy silence, Yin Tianxin finally spoke up and asked the question directly. Xiao Tian's movement stopped instantly, and Panda AI's hands froze midair. The poor man nearly burst into tears, explaining that there was nothing but dried fruit back on Longwu Mountain. He noted that even as the celestial master of Longwu Mountain, the Taoists there were actually allowed to eat meat. Besides, since humans are omnivores, he argued that going too long without meat would eventually cause the body to fail. To keep up his nutrition, he had reached the point where he'd eaten nearly every rat on Longwu Mountain. He had even emptied out the birds' nests, a truly difficult life, to be perfectly honest. Fortunately, he met this brother who brought him down the mountain. Otherwise, he figured he would have started eating dirt. While he had been furious about Xiao Tian's initial aggressive behavior, now only a sense of deep gratitude remained. This time, he felt as though he had finally escaped the sea of bitterness. After saying his piece, Panda AI went right back to bowing his head and eating loudly. The corner of Xiao Tian's mouth twitched at the sight. Suddenly, he began to doubt whether he had actually recruited the right person. Could this rambling, gluttonous man really be one of the top experts of the Dragon Realm in future generations? Meanwhile, ever since Xiao Tian posted that video, every beast-hunting warrior from the Great Confucian Force had been searching for the Dragon Realm. He couldn't help but wonder if this man was truly one of the Dragon Realm's top experts, especially since Yuan's whereabouts remained a total mystery. Yin Tianxin suddenly looked over at Xiao Tian. Ever since Yin Ruyu and Xiao Tian paired up the night before, his way of addressing him had changed. Xiao Tian simply nodded, acknowledging that their target was indeed quite skilled at staying hidden. He was much stronger than Kam Mengwang, and they realized they should probably offer more rewards to get more people involved. Should we have them join the search team? Yin Tianxin asked, trying to gauge the next move. After spending some time together, he had come to understand that Xiao Tian was quite vengeful, particularly when it came to his enemies. His style was to finish them off completely, because for those who dared to provoke Xiao Tian, life would quickly become a never-ending nightmare, though for his teammates, he was a literal lifeline. At the moment, building that resurrection-level team was Xiao Tian's primary goal. Besides, he now held a devour opportunity in reserve that he hadn't even used yet. As for the matter with Yuan, Xiao Tian felt he didn't have much more time to waste. Currently, everyone from the Diru force was out searching for their opponent's location. In the short term, they likely wouldn't dare to continue their work on the realm. Fortunately, the villa had already been successfully transformed. It was now a safe haven with incredibly high defenses, which was a relief. The level had reached 14, and he had managed to accumulate a massive amount of materials. The only thing he had to consider now was what to do before the second zone opened up. He needed to complete his current phase of devouring, as Xiao Tian was now ready to evolve. That is to say, he was ready to consume his next target and grow even stronger. The only question remaining was, what kind of beast would actually be worth devouring? Right at that moment, the television in the living room suddenly cut away to an urgent news report. The first research institute of Diru had apparently discovered an immortal mutant cockroach. Now, the Diru army was calling upon all residents to come forward and offer their help. An image appeared on the screen, showing a black cockroach in a laboratory that was roughly the size of a kitten. We see it scurrying through the facility, which, to be honest, had already descended into absolute chaos. The researchers seemed completely powerless, regardless of which methods they tried against this oversized pest. In the chaotic footage, we see that someone had even resorted to using weapons of war. The Diru army hadn't just stood by, they used thermal weapons, sending bursts of scarlet fire across the room. They even used launchers, but as soon as the projectiles struck the cockroach's body, they were immediately repelled by the black shell, leaving nothing behind but a few stray sparks. Among the researchers in the lab, there were also spirit beast warriors who weren't just standing idly by. They chose to act, but this cockroach proved to be quite the elusive little troublemaker. At the very first moment of the attack, Bosun arrived on the scene at a full run. The creature was harder to catch than a greased pig at a fair, and the lab remained a total mess. The army tried to rescue researchers from several malfunctioning instruments, but they were all knocked to the ground. Naturally, it didn't take long for this incident to reach the top of the news search trends. Underneath the related videos, the comment sections were filled with spectators simply enjoying the show. As for people actually willing to help, well, there wasn't a single soul to be found. With the dark turmoil having broken out, most people were far more concerned about where their next meal was coming from. Who had the time, really, to help a laboratory solve its self-inflicted problems? Unexpectedly, it seems that even the cockroaches have begun to transform. The university army was truly desperate, actively seeking outside help to deal with the situation. It appeared they were truly out of options. Yantian Shin smacked his lips, watching the television footage while quietly nibbling on a chicken leg. He had cooperated with the university army many times before, and both sides were quite familiar with one another. Because of this, he felt a bit moved. Fortunately, for now, only animals, plants, and insects were transforming. Bacteria and other microorganisms hadn't transformed yet, which was a blessing, to be honest. If bacteria ever became transformed beasts, the world would instantly turn into a living hell on Earth. Regarding this particular cockroach, Xiaotian narrowed his eyes and suddenly stood up. It was capable of dodging attacks from various thermal weapons and surviving the siege of many mercenary warriors. This cockroach was clearly no simple pest. He realized that perhaps he could swallow it. He told the others he was going to the laboratory and instructed them all to stay in the villa. No matter how big the problem became, they would have to wait for his return before discussing it further. Upon hearing Xiaotian's words, Yin Ruyu and Yintian Shun were left stunned for a moment. It seemed the young man actually planned to go and help the laboratory. Yintian Shun was flabbergasted, as he hadn't expected Xiaotian, who was usually so focused on exterminating enemies, to possess the heart of a saint. Meanwhile, Panda AI remained completely unmoved by the news. Even if the sky were to collapse, the panda simply told him to go forth with confidence. Yintian Shin nodded and smiled, assuring him that they would all be waiting right there for him. Yin Ryu stood up, her face turning a soft red as she quietly told Xiaotian he must return safely. Xiaotian gave a nod and, driving his Ferrari, left the villa and headed straight for the first research institute. As for the research institutes, we find that they exist in great numbers throughout the Dragon Kingdom. Each of these institutes serves as a maximum security military base, guarded with the utmost care. We see surveillance posts scattered everywhere, watching every possible entrance. In normal times, any ordinary person who dared to approach would be arrested immediately. They might even be invited to have a very long, very unpleasant cup of tea in a prison cell. But now that the dark turmoil has erupted, the world is a very different place. The old rules have become nothing more than useless scraps of paper. Director, has someone actually come to support our institute? A voice called out hopefully. A staff member led Xiaotian inside, announcing that he had finally brought the person they were expecting. They entered an office, where the staff member shouted in surprise toward the figure standing ahead. There, sitting on the leather sofa of the office, was a rather voluptuous woman. The woman was dressed in a white laboratory coat, looking every bit the professional. The coat left her long, slender legs exposed, a detail that was hard to miss, to be honest. Sun Kuilan was quite excited at first, but upon seeing only Xiaotian, her disappointment was clear. Only one has come, Sun Kuilan asked, looking at the staff member with a skeptical brow. Only this one has arrived, the staff member replied, awkwardly scratching his head. Sun Kuilan let out a heavy sigh, then stood up and walked toward Xiaotian. A burst of fragrance enveloped him, and Xiaotian realized this woman's beauty was truly timeless. He noted that even Yin Ruyu, with all her grace, didn't quite compare to her. Even observing her from such a close distance, he couldn't find a single flaw. Her delicate features were truly flawless, right down to a small mole just below the corner of her right eye. It added a certain touch of beauty. How should we put it? She possessed a naturally seductive aura as she invited him to let her introduce herself. I am the director of this facility, Sun Kuilan, she said smoothly. With a professional grace, Sun Kuilan extended her hand toward Xiaotian. Sun Kuilan? Hearing that name, Xiaotian's expression became rather strange. If he remembered correctly, this woman was also a renowned genius. Before his rebirth, she had used the research within this territory to develop a great deal of powerful equipment. Xiaotian remained silent for a moment before finally reaching out his own hand. He shook her hand as she thanked him for being willing to come to the laboratory to help so selflessly. However, she noted there were things he needed to know, specifically regarding this howling wolf. It wasn't an ordinary mutated beast. In fact, they estimated it wasn't a standard howling wolf at all. Technically, it was only C rank, yet even with all their elite warriors working together, they couldn't kill it. Since he was willing to help, she asked him directly what he hoped to obtain in return. Which animal's ability was he after? Sun Kuilan spoke with total sincerity, but Xiaotian found the question difficult. The ability he possessed was, to be precise, a combination of a mutant horse, an electric eel, and a rare hunting hawk. But the current consensus was that warriors could only obtain one enhanced ability, so even if Xiaodian told her the absolute truth, he suspected she might not even believe him. "I think we should stop the small talk," he replied, "since I've already made it here to help." He assured her he wouldn't delay them, and though Sun Kuilin wanted to argue, she felt something different coming from him. She felt an inexplicable sense of confidence radiating from him, a feeling that she couldn't quite put into words. This boy seemed so young. She wondered, where on earth did he get such certainty? We have to remember that in her laboratory, even with so many elite warriors working together, they hadn't been able to solve the problem. So, why was he so sure of himself against this mutant cockroach? However, the entire research institute was currently helpless, and besides Xiaodian, no one else dared to step in and help. If that mutant creature were allowed to continue its wild rampage, the entire laboratory would be completely destroyed. With the mindset of taking a desperate final measure, Sun Kuilin personally led Xiaodian into the lab. The laboratory was absolute chaos, with walls made of reinforced materials now battered and riddled with holes. The scene was truly ghastly, as many of the Institute's warriors were still desperately trying to surround the beast. They were closing in on the mutant cockroach just as the laboratory doors swung open. The creature, which remained completely unharmed despite the combined assault, suddenly screeched to a halt. It abruptly changed direction, leaping a meter into the air and spreading its 8 massive legs wide. Like a facehugger straight out of a horror movie, it came rushing directly toward Xiaodian. This was subject number 950.017, a metamorphosed pigtail warrior. Good grief, Xiaodian's pupils shrank as he let out a curse. He was genuinely stunned. His own level had reached 14, meaning that back at the university, he wouldn't have feared anyone. But imagine the scene, a massive cockroach, half a meter long, charging at you in an extremely bizarre pose. Wouldn't you panic? Xiaodian felt a similar surge of adrenaline, despite the crowd of people around him. Standing right beside him was the beautiful director of the institute, Sun Kuilin. And yet, of all people, this cockroach chose to come straight for him. Xiaodian had no idea why this was happening, but of one thing he was absolutely certain. It definitely wasn't out of love, and we see the other test warriors in the lab react with horror. The expressions on their faces changed drastically in an instant. They were convinced it was over, and that the poor boy didn't stand a chance. Now, this mutant cockroach hadn't actually displayed overwhelming destructive power just yet. But at the end of the day, it was still a mutant beast, a dangerous variable by any definition. If word of this reached the high command, they would likely have someone's head for it. Suddenly, the chaotic scene fell into a strange, heavy silence. Everyone turned to look at Xiaodian at the same time, fully expecting the worst to happen. To be perfectly honest, Xiaodian himself shared that exact same fear. After a brief moment of shock, he prepared to immediately enter his beast state. But just then, an utterly astonishing scene unfolded before our eyes. The mutant cockroach didn't actually attack Xiaodian. Instead, it simply lunged toward his feet. It then lay flat on the floor, making a constant, rhythmic clicking sound with its mouth. It seemed, and this is the strange part, as if it were expressing its submission to him. What on earth was going on? Xiaodian could only scratch his head in confusion. Even as a reborn soul, he couldn't help but feel a bit dazed by the absurdity of it all. Imagine the scene, a mutant beast showing such a humble attitude toward a human being. He had never heard of such a thing happening, not even in his previous life. "Are you showing me submission?" Xiaodian asked, pointing at the creature with hesitation. A clicking sound? Yes, a clicking sound. The mutant cockroach let out a low growl, as if it were actually responding to Xiaodian. Although he didn't understand the meaning of that low sound, Xiaodian saw clearly that the creature's posture had lowered even further. Submission. There was no other word for it. The mutant cockroach had truly submitted itself to him. We see the entire laboratory, including Sun Kuilin and the other researchers, frozen in place, wondering what on earth was happening. Everyone was utterly stupefied. This incredible scene was completely rewriting everything they thought they knew. This unique beast, which had left the entire research institute feeling completely helpless, was now actually taking the initiative to bow down before a human being. Sun Kuilin, being the director after all, quickly suppressed the shock in her heart and turned her gaze toward Xiaodian. She was desperate for an answer. Xiaodian himself was still dazed, but his mind soon turned to the bloodline interface in his system. To be honest, it wasn't that high yet. His current bloodline level was 10, and this mutated cockroach also fell within that primary level. He wondered if his own bloodline level was exerting some kind of suppressive effect over the creature. Xiaodian was already starting to suspect as much, though he hadn't found a way to verify it just yet. He didn't want to jump to conclusions too easily, but he could confirm that the creature had indeed expressed its total submission. He had originally thought he'd have to put up a bit of a fight, but now he decided he would simply take the mutant cockroach with him. Xiaodian gave a quick nod to Sun Kuilin and, without waiting for her permission, looked at the creature on the floor and told it to follow him. After saying that, he turned and walked out of the lab, and the mutant cockroach followed closely at his heels. It was as if the beast truly understood Xiaoyan's words, which, naturally, was the strangest part of all. Good God, not only had a mutant beast submitted to a human, but it seemed to comprehend human language as well. The scene was beyond bizarre. Everyone simply stared at one another, not knowing what to say. And so, they stood there in silence, unable to utter a single word for a very long time. The entire laboratory was filled with nothing but the sound of deep, heavy breathing. It wasn't until Xiaoyan had actually left the lab with the mutant cockroach that everyone finally recovered from their shock. We must remember that the government had already issued an official announcement declaring all mutant beasts as enemies of humanity. They were described as bloodthirsty, brutal, and utterly devoid of any human-like qualities. The researchers never imagined one of these creatures would simply follow a young man like a loyal pet. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have found it impossible to believe a mutant beast would submit so willingly. They began to wonder if this was somehow related to his awakened animal ability. But what kind of animal ability had he actually awakened, exactly? What power could possibly force a mutant beast into such voluntary submission? Suddenly, one of them realized why the young man looked so familiar. He seemed to be the one who had monopolized the supplies and triggered that online search order. Was this Xiaoyan really the same person? It seemed almost too incredible to be true. Most of those present in the lab were scientific researchers, after all, and so, they soon began a heated debate over the implications of what they had just witnessed. Only Sun Kuyalin remained silent, staring in the direction where Xiaoyan had disappeared. She had a thoughtful expression. The idea of making a mutant beast submit voluntarily was fascinating to her. To be honest, she desperately wanted to investigate how a human could achieve such a feat. But she also knew very well that they were living through a period of dark and violent upheaval. The old world order and its rules had collapsed a long time ago. She realized she simply didn't have the authority to stop Xiaoyan and demand answers about the situation. After all, the young man had just helped the research institute resolve a major crisis. Xiaoyan, however, had no idea just how much of a stir his behavior had caused back at the lab. He simply walked away from the facility, accompanied by the mutant cockroach. Eventually, Xiaoyan found an abandoned chicken feet curry stall to stop at. Since the dark uprising began, the world had become a far more hostile place. Survival had become the primary pursuit, and the law of the jungle was being displayed in its most extreme form. Humans not only faced threats from mutant beasts, but also had to guard against attacks from zero-beast warriors. Consequently, the streets that were once teeming with people were now almost entirely deserted. Can you understand what I'm saying? Xiaoyan asked, turning to look at the mutant creature. The mutant beast let out a low roar and gave a slight nod with its flat head. It seemed it truly understood him, as it then lowered its jaw and began to tear at something. He began to wonder if all of this was truly related to the level of his bloodline. With his bloodline at level 12, he questioned if any beast at a lower level would be naturally suppressed by his presence and forced to surrender. Still, he decided not to overthink it. The priority now was to complete the devouring. He needed to continue growing stronger, and with that thought, Xiaoyan looked at the mutant creature once more. He spoke quite seriously, telling the creature that since it had surrendered, he was now going to eat it. "You don't have any objections, do you?" he asked, as the creature responded with a series of chirps. The mutant beast let out one final low roar in response. Then, it suddenly turned and bolted, its 8 legs moving so fast they left afterimages behind. It appeared that even though the creature had surrendered, it wasn't exactly eager to be the main course. But it seemed the creature still possessed a will of its own. It wasn't some kind of emotionless machine, a fact that made Xiaoyan chuckle softly. Then, the black wings on his back unfurled as he entered his beast state directly. 2 feathers, crackling with lightning, shot forward like projectiles. The fleeing mutant beast was suddenly engulfed by an electric current surging through its entire body. Its frame went rigid on the spot, emitting a series of endless, frantic chirps. Xiaoyan paid the noise no mind, flapping his wings to close the distance in an instant. He then tilted his head and bit down firmly on the mutant creature's head. With a loud crunch, he found the taste of the wing meat to be surprisingly pleasant. A few minutes later, the mutant beast had been devoured by Xiaoyan, leaving not even a single wing behind. And here we see the system offer its congratulations for successfully devouring the creature. The extraction of the genetic sequence had been a complete success. Name, Xiaoyan. His power had now reached level 14. His bloodline remained at level 12, with his genetic sequence number reaching 9,500. This specific sequence identified him as a void spirit warrior. He now inherited the remarkable characteristic of regenerating severed limbs. He could extend a pair of wings and release those deadly lightning feathers. This allowed him to cut through enemies while possessing a powerful perception of danger. He thought the name Linsu Warrior sounded a bit strange, to be honest. But compared to the power he felt, Xiaoyan simply curled his lips into a satisfied smile. He stood there, frozen in place, looking like a river lion drenched in blood. We see that until now, every time he devours a new genetic sequence, his body undergoes a corresponding change. For instance, there is the yellow horse mouth on his palm and the black hawk wings on his back. And let us not forget the electric eel skull currently sitting on his head. He certainly didn't expect what would happen after devouring the mutated Xiao Wolf this time. In reality, a pair of Xiao Wolf tentacles had actually sprouted from him. His beast form seems to be growing more grotesque by the day, which, to be honest, is saying quite a bit. But soon enough, Xiaotian sensed that something was slightly off. With that pair of tentacles on his head, his senses were suddenly amplified to an infinite degree. The subtle movement of the wind and the shifting grass all around him became clear. Nothing could escape his detection, not even a group of ants a few meters away carrying food scraps across the ground. Every detail was captured clearly by his mind, a sensation that felt truly mysterious. It was as if his soul had left his body to observe everything from a third-person perspective. Suddenly, Xiaotian felt a surge of dangerous aura nearby. With no time to think, he quickly threw himself to the side to dodge. A large tree right behind Xiaotian suddenly began to crack and splinter. A massive chameleon, 2.5 meters long, emerged instantly and launched an attack. The spot where Xiaotian had been standing just moments before had already been gouged into a deep pit. Seeing this scene, Xiaotian didn't feel good about the situation at all. This was a chameleon, a beast that had become something far more formidable after its mutation. The creature must have been hiding right there the entire time, yet he hadn't noticed a thing. If it weren't for those 2 tentacles on his head, it would have been absolutely impossible for Xiaotian to react in time. Even if he had relied on his super high defense to survive, he would have ended up crippled. Seeing Xiaotian dodge the strike, the chameleon let out a roar and lunged at him again with all its strength. We see that the chameleon's speed is truly remarkable. To an ordinary person, its movement trajectory would be nothing more than a blur. But in Xiaotian's eyes, the beast's actions were unnaturally slow, like a scene playing out in slow motion. Xiaotian could not only see the movement, but he could also predict exactly where his opponent was heading. Relying on this new sense, Xiaotian elegantly stepped to the side with total ease. He dodged the chameleon's attack and, in the same motion, extended his palm toward the creature's abdomen. The mouth on his palm latched onto the chameleon's belly with a powerful suction. Innumerous sharp teeth, acting like a meat grinder, began to bite down frantically. The chameleon let out a piercing cry as its internal organs were instantly torn and shredded. It was sent straight into the darkness, becoming nothing more than a meal. Death was instantaneous. Xiaotian looked down at his blood-stained palms in silence. It took him a moment to process what happened, followed by a surge of pure ecstasy. It seems this pair of tentacles, which look like cockroach feelers, to be honest, should not be underestimated. With these, he realized it would be far easier to face any opponent that crossed his path. An enemy might be fast, and he might not match their raw speed, but it no longer mattered how quickly they moved. In his eyes, every strike was now as clear as a slow-motion replay. How should we put it? Immediately afterward, Xiaotian deactivated his beastly state. He pulled a crystal core from the chameleon's corpse and absorbed it. His level didn't increase directly, though he did feel his strength grow just a little bit. With Xiaotian's current standing, he also managed to rise from level 10 to level 12. He wondered if the improvement of his bloodline level was directly related to what he swallowed. With the battle finished, Xiaotian began to reflect on how to further evolve his bloodline. But before he could think too deeply, the entire Duru Hall underwent a sudden, violent change. The originally clear sky was suddenly covered in dark clouds, and a pillar of black light appeared. It rose toward the heavens from a specific direction, piercing right through the clouds. At that moment, countless people within the Duru Hall witnessed this magnificent scene simultaneously. The second border zone had opened, and Xiaotian narrowed his eyes with a glimmer of excitement. We must remember that before his rebirth, he was nothing more than an ordinary person. Now, he marched imposingly toward the place where the pillar of light had emerged. The appearance of that light had already caused a massive commotion throughout the Duru Hall. Many were worried it was a sign of an approaching disaster, and most were trying to stay away. They kept their distance as much as possible, as they weren't sure of the risks and didn't dare approach. However, there were also plenty of bold souls who ventured closer to investigate the situation. By the time Xiaotian's group arrived at the scene, a large crowd had already gathered there. Every single person present was an awakened warrior. There was no doubt about that, as ordinary people wouldn't dare wander out casually at a time like this. However, even though they were awakened warriors, none of them dared to act rashly, and they all moved to the front with looks of pure astonishment. Beneath that towering pillar of light, we see a distorted space-time vortex. The vortex released a faint, sharp energy. It was filled with chaos, and not a single scene could be glimpsed within it. Xiaotian knew exactly what he was looking at. This vortex was the gateway to the second realm. Is this the gateway to the second realm you were talking about? Yen Ruyu examined the vortex closely, asking the question with a touch of curiosity. Yes, Xiaotian replied with a simple nod. Panda AI began calculating with his fingers, but then he frowned quite severely. What exactly is inside here? I can't calculate a single thing. He feared that the world inside this vortex was anything but simple. Xiaotian remained non-committal, knowing that the world within the realm was essentially another world entirely. To be honest, if Panda AI could actually calculate something here, he would be a true god. Just at that moment, a familiar voice echoed from not very far away. Xiao Tian looked up and saw the beautiful Dean, protected by layers of military personnel. Shen Qian. It seemed this beauty was also present at the scene. I didn't expect to find you here. Thank you for what you did at the Institute. You left so quickly back then that I didn't even have time to offer you my apologies. Shen Qian was quite enthusiastic, and who could blame her, really, considering Xiao Tian's help. Deep down, she knew that without him, the research institute would likely have been destroyed. It was a mutual necessity, he replied calmly. There is no need to thank me. Xiao Tian adapted remarkably well. In the days before the disaster, a mature beauty like this one, taking the initiative to speak with him would have left him too nervous to utter a single word. But now, in this era of dark chaos, he saw beauties as nothing more than fleeting distractions. To him, increasing his own strength was the only real priority. He told himself that women would only complicate his life, and there was simply nothing to be done about that. Shen Qian didn't seem to mind his distance, and quickly changed the subject, looking toward the vortex before her. You are an awakened warrior as well, she noted, seeking his insight. Do you know the origin of this vortex? It seems to connect to a very special world. Xiao Tian didn't bother hiding the truth and told her directly that it leads to another realm entirely. Shen Qian was visibly surprised, realizing there were likely many threats hidden within that swirling energy. You are just an ordinary person, he warned her. Even with protection, your safety isn't guaranteed. He advised her not to enter lightly, but then he, Enro, and the others took the initiative to step forward. As Xiao Tian vanished into the vortex, Enro and Panda AI shared a look before bravely following him inside. Seeing the four of them enter at once, the rest of the crowd began to move, having overheard his words to Shen Qian. They knew that while the risks were great, the potential rewards were even greater, and many chose to follow. Dean, it might be better if we don't go in, one of her guards said, looking at Shen Qian with deep concern. Shen Qian simply shook her head, insisting that threats and opportunities always go hand in hand. If she could find something new to study, the risk would be worth it, so her team had no choice but to escort her in. As our group crossed the threshold, the world changed drastically, and a blood-red moon appeared suddenly above them. Before they could even take in the scenery, a humanoid figure let out a beastly roar and lunged toward them. The team cried out in shock, nearly jumping out of their skins, while Xiao Tian was already accustomed to the dark forest from his previous battles. Having cleared entire areas before, Enro and the other women had also seen these woods with him and were, naturally, feeling relatively calm. However, seeing the black mist enveloping the trees still sparked a flicker of fear, especially for Yen Tian-san, who had fought these entities before and was nearly exhausted by just one. These monsters are far more terrifying than the mutated beasts back in the city. If they were to appear on the blue star, it would be a nightmare for all humanity. For Fatty AI, seeing them for the first time, such a reaction was only normal. Xiao Tian didn't waste words. Black wings sprouted from his back, and a feather shot out like a hidden blade, piercing the creature's skull for an instant kill. It seems this celestial master is a bit of a monster himself, and perhaps a little embarrassed, as if he hasn't seen much of the world beyond his mountain. In truth, he really hasn't seen much since arriving at Rongshan. As an apprentice focused on his arts, he rarely ever descended to the lowlands. Enro stepped forward to smooth things over, explaining that these aren't zombies, but a unique forest entity found only in this realm. Fatty AI scratched his head, feeling sheepish, and remarked that it felt like being in a doomsday movie. To be honest, he wasn't far off. Yen Tian-sun noted that these creatures only exist here, but Xiao Tian simply shook his head, revealing a much darker truth about the Nine Heavens. He explained that with each level of the dark chaos, the strength of mutated beasts will increase, and eventually, these forests will descend upon the blue star. Xiao Tian paused before adding that these entities can evolve without limit, just like a zero-beast warrior. This was knowledge he had gained before his rebirth. Hearing this, Yen Tian-sen's mouth hung open as a strange, icy chill traveled from the soles of his feet straight to the top of his head. He could accept beasts getting stronger, but the idea of this terrifying forest invading their home world was simply too much to process. If this truly happens, even the zero-beast warriors will face extinction. Currently, the blue star is already struggling just with the mutated beasts, having lost all semblance of order. If the dark forest descends, everything will be turned upside down, a total collapse of their world as they know it. Furthermore, Xiao Tian mentioned the chaos is divided into 9 levels. We have to wonder if they are merely surviving the very first stage. Yen Tiansen realized the young man before him was far too mysterious. Despite his years of business insight, he couldn't see through him at all. But with the situation so precarious and danger lurking in every shadow, he decided not to press for answers and focused on the path ahead. Fatty, it's your turn. Celestial Master of Longshan, show us some skills. Xiao Tian shook off his thoughts and looked at Fatty AI, who immediately stood tall. He was quite proud. While Longshan might be second in combat power, when it comes to the art of divination, no one dares claim the top spot over them. Don't you worry, Fatty AI said, confidently patting his chest. He then pulled a compass from his pocket with his left hand, while his right hand began tracing signs. After calculating for a moment, he suddenly looked toward a specific horizon. The greatest opportunity in this realm lies in that direction, he declared with certainty. He suggested that as long as they took a stroll that way, they would surely find it. Xiao Tian simply nodded, as if he already knew. With a wave of his hand, Xiao Tian led the group in the direction Fatty AI indicated. As they moved forward, we see how the realm's atmosphere began to weigh on them. He was struck by the blood moon hanging over this land. There is no vitality here, only mist. One could easily argue that hell itself looks exactly like this. A worried soldier told the director that it was far too dangerous and suggested they turn back, fearing they couldn't protect her if something went wrong. Shen Jiulan looked around, and though she felt her hair stand on end, her dedication to her research won out. My mind is made up, Captain Wang. Move the team forward. One by one, the others entered the realm. However, as soon as they left the entrance, several shadowy figures appeared in their wake, watching them intently. After exchanging looks, these shadows followed Xiao Tian's group. Meanwhile, our protagonists were tearing through anything in their path, showing no mercy to man or beast. Whenever the dark forest blocked their way, no matter the numbers, Xiao Tian eliminated them in seconds. It wasn't that the forest was trying to stop them, specifically. It was simply that the entities in this second realm are still in their infancy, all below level 10. Xiao Tian, however, is already level 14. With the power boost from his 4 genetic sequences, his presence here is essentially a dimensional collapse. Under Fatty AI's guidance, they were eventually drawn toward a strange altar. At the center of this altar stands a high platform covered in complex, tiny patterns that radiate a sense of unease. And right there, at the very top, 6 crucifixes are placed, each adorned with a set of black armor. A peculiar, undulating force seems to ripple across the dark surface of the gear. At the heart of the armor sits a pale blue gem engraved with unknown lines. This is the place, Fatty AI said, checking his compass before looking up. He confirmed that the greatest treasure here was indeed the armor on those crosses. To be honest, finding resurrection-level equipment this early is a miracle. Xiao Tian stared at the armor, his eyes filled with a rare hunger and his breathing growing heavy. He could never forget these, not in 1,000 lifetimes. In his previous life, the elite experts of the Dragon Kingdom almost all wore gear like this. These legendary pieces have a specific name, resurrection armor. For the Xiao Tian of his past life, who was just an ordinary man, this kind of treasure was a distant dream. But now, it is finally within his reach. Without a moment's hesitation, the black wings on Xiao Tian's back unfurled, and he soared toward the high platform. Suddenly, a roar shattered the silent night as a massive monster landed before the altar, blocking his path. Though shrouded in mist, one could still see its bulging muscles and those piercing, blood-red eyes. The creature also possessed a pair of bat-like wings and gripped a trident burning with eerie blue flames. To be honest, this is no ordinary guardian. It isn't hard to see that the opponent has reached the ultimate level. Xiao Tian sensed he was facing a level 20 existence. Getting this armor won't be easy. It's quite incredible that such powerful dark creatures still exist here. But facing a level 20 obstruction, we have to wonder how anyone claimed this armor before. There is no time for deep thought. The resurrection armor is right there, and even if his path were blocked by a hell of blades and fire, he wouldn't flinch. A low, deep roar echoed as Xiao Tian's eyes turned red. Instead of retreating, he charged directly forward, driven by a singular, burning purpose. He activated his roar and lunged at the dark creature. Seeing him rush out like that, Han Ryu was left completely stunned by his sudden aggression. The opponent is a monster beyond comprehension, a level 20 dark creature. She couldn't understand how he could just charge in like that. Fatty AI was also speechless. He was now fully convinced that Xiao Tian is a truly ruthless man. In this situation, charging forward is practically a death wish, or so it would seem. It's as if the man is so full of courage that he simply doesn't know the meaning of fear. At this moment, Fatty AI even felt a bit of irony. He realized Xiao Tian chose him because he's the last master of Longshan who understands divination. If his old teacher were here, he'd likely be the one taking the hit. Just then, another roar echoed through the sky, drawing everyone's attention. Seeing a mere human taking the initiative to attack, the dark creature became utterly enraged, throwing a massive fist toward Xiao Tian. As the blow was launched, the air was compressed so violently it created a sonic boom. One can only imagine the power of that strike. A direct hit would surely tear a man to pieces. As the two figures closed in, Xiao Tian's wings fluttered. Suddenly, narrowly dodging the lethal attack, he immediately countered, firing several feathers from his back like projectiles toward the dark creature. Without exception, the feathers sank into the creature's flesh, releasing a terrifying current. However, to Xiao Tian's surprise, the shock seemed to have no effect on the beast's vitality. If anything, the blood-red glow in its eyes only grew more intense and menacing. The creature swung its trident at Xiao Tian, cursing under his breath, and with no other choice, he braced his body to withstand the powerful blow. With a deafening crash, Xiao Tian was swatted away like a fly, the massive force of the blow slamming him directly into the hard ground. Both Xiao Tian and Han Ryu were shaken. She worried for the man she'd just pledged her life to. If he died here, she'd be left a widow in her parents' home. Just as she and the others rushed to check on him, Xiao Tian staggered back to his feet from the crater where he'd been struck. He was covered in blood now, his breathing ragged and unstable, yet he insisted he was fine. He shook his head, looking every bit the battered hero, while Fatty AI simply clicked his tongue, utterly speechless at the sight. Han Ryu, determined, told him she would heal him. She rushed to his side and placed her hands on his back. A pale yellow light flickered to life, enveloping his body and beginning the slow process of mending his wounds. However, because her level was still quite low, and Xiao Tian's physical constitution was unnaturally robust, the recovery speed was, to be honest, painfully slow. The dark figure before them shook its head, as if mocking the effort. Xiao Tian told her it was no use, and urged her to leave this to him, but then someone else stepped forward. Yin Tianxin stood up with a bold, confident smile. He told the young man to stay back and recover from his injuries first, promising that he would handle this monster himself. After those words, he entered his beast state, transforming into a muscular, demonic figure. Yet, standing before this elite-level dark creature, he still looked rather small. Xiao Tian's gaze shifted between the two of them. He hesitated, asking if it was truly okay, as he knew the level gap between Yin Tianxin and the beast was far too wide. Yin Tianxin told him not to worry. He recounted how he'd left school at 17 and built a business empire by 23. He had survived many great storms in his time. He noted that they couldn't rely on Xiao Tian for everything, and that he could at least manage to delay the beast for a while. It was a fair point, in a way. Yin Tianxin let out a laugh and then a roar, actively lunging toward the dark creature. His actions were decisive, leaving Xiao Tian no room to argue further. He left behind only the silhouette of a brave man. As Han Ryu watched her father's back, he seemed to grow even taller in her eyes. It was a moment of true paternal pride. Yin Tianxin swallowed hard, his muscles tensing as he leaped 3 meters into the air. He put every ounce of his strength into a punch aimed at the creature's abdomen. He poured everything into that strike, hoping that even if he couldn't defeat the opponent, he could at least cause some visible damage, or so he hoped. However, as he looked at the dark beast, he realized the situation was far worse than he imagined. His full-force blow hadn't even managed to make the creature flinch. Not a single hair was out of place. It seemed he had spoken too soon. At his current level, he was absolutely no match for the dark entity standing before him. While Yin Tianxin stood there dazed, the space in front of him suddenly went dark. He looked up to see a fist the size of a sandbag blotting out the sun. Curse his luck. As a business elite, he had maintained his composure for years, priding himself on staying calm even if a mountain collapsed. But now, that composure was finally failing him. Even so, he couldn't help but let out a curse as his composure finally shattered. A fist descended, and Yin Tianxin was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. After tumbling across the ground dozens of times, he finally managed to steady himself, only to open his mouth and cough up a thick spray of blood. To be fair, Yin Tianxin had indeed bought some recovery time for the group, exactly 3 seconds of it. We returned to Xiao Tian, who watched in silence. Yin Tianxin coughed softly, lowering his head, not daring to meet the eyes of Xiao Tian or Han Ryu after all the grand boasting he'd done just moments before. Being defeated in seconds by the dark creature was, naturally, quite embarrassing. Xiao Tian shook his head, noting that their levels were simply too low for this fight. Just as he prepared to stand, Fatty AI stepped forward, insisting it was his turn. He joked that despite the beating Xiao Tian gave him earlier, he couldn't just eat his food and do nothing. The self-proclaimed angel of the last generation grinned, showing his teeth, and pulled a yellow talisman from his sleeve with a flourish. He tossed it, and the dark being simply watched, seemingly stunned by the audacity. The talisman successfully stuck itself onto the creature's massive, muscular arm. Fatty AI narrowed his small eyes, weaving his hands into a complex seal as he chanted a low, rhythmic incantation to invoke the divine thunder of the 9 heavens. With a deafening boom, the yellow paper erupted into a wild burst of lightning, completely enveloping the dark creature's arm in a cage of electricity. For a moment, Han Ryu allowed herself to hope it had worked. However, as the light of the thunder dissipated, the dark figure emerged once more. Not only was it completely unharmed, but its blood-red eyes were now fixed on Fatty AI with a truly monstrous, murderous intent. Understandably, Fatty AI's face went pale, his Adam's apple bobbed as he silently retreated to hide behind Xiao Tian's back. He sheepishly admitted he might have been bragging a bit, claiming his best talismans were already gone and that Xiao Tian would have to take it from here. Just as he finished speaking, the whistling wind roared again, the dark being swung its massive trident directly toward Xiao Tian and the others in a lethal thrust. In that instant, everyone felt the chilling touch of death. It seemed a bit extreme to try and kill them over a simple disagreement, but such is the world they live in. As the trident descended, Fatty AI braced himself for a tragic end. Despite his claims, he was no frontline warrior, just a man out of his depth. And while Yantian Shun and Xiao Tian were seasoned fighters, their current levels simply didn't give them the capital needed to resist such overwhelming force. At the critical moment, Xiao Tian lunged forward, his wings trembling as he unleashed a frantic, torrential rain of feathers like falling pear blossoms. This desperate barrage temporarily stalled the giant trident's descent, though Xiao Tian's wings were instantly covered in jagged, blood-colored tears from the effort. Soon, new feathers began to grow back along the line of the moon. However, these attacks could only temporarily slow his opponent without causing any real damage. Xiao Tian looked up and watched. He observed the unharmed dark being and made a judgment. After all, dark beings are still living creatures, and since they are alive, they naturally possess flesh and blood. Before devouring the filthy, mutated wolf, Xiao Tian could restore his strength by absorbing blood, but he found that he could no longer do so. That specific ability had been discarded. He can still regenerate limbs, but restoring his wounds through blood absorption is now beyond him. To be honest, this is a normal part of his infinite genetic evolution. Each time he devours, he adds new skills while discarding others. If every meal created a permanent new genetic sequence, he would eventually possess every attribute imaginable. In that case, he truly would become a monster. Xiao Tian felt a bit helpless, realizing he would have to use the filthy, mutated wolf's ability, which he hadn't shown yet. We see his hesitation, for while these filthy wolf tendrils can perceive threats in advance and track an opponent's trajectory, their physical appearance is, well, a bit much. They look quite ridiculous, much like pigtails, and Xiao Tian hadn't used them out of pure embarrassment. But with a single thought, 2 long tendrils sprouted from his head. Yen Ryu noted with a daze that Xiao Tian didn't have those tendrils before. She wondered what animal's ability he had obtained to have wings, electric eels, and now this. Her pretty face was full of confusion, but the aesthetics weren't the main point. The key was that as soon as those tendrils appeared, the flow of battle shifted dramatically. Originally, Xiao Tian hardly had a chance to defend himself against this dark being, but with the tendrils active, it was as if he had suddenly activated a cheat code. When facing the dark being's onslaught, he wasn't just dodging, he was moving well in advance, predicting every strike with uncanny, almost impossible precision. The dark creature attempted to throw a heavy punch, but the moment it even lifted its fist, Xiao Tian had already predicted the entire movement. Using his wings, he evaded the attack early and darted between the creature's legs, delivering a ruthless series of punches and kicks directly to its crotch. The dark creature tried to defend itself with everything it had, but as we know, no matter what kind of creature you are, some hits simply hurt more than others.